Chapter 160. When the bright moon hung high above the yellow pine tree by the cliff, the last believer who came to the mountain to pay his respects finally left. Lu Laodao carefully inspected the main hall of the mountain god temple, then locked the door. There were no valuable things in the hall, only some clay statues. These statues could be made by the clay craftsmen of Egret Island, and it would only cost a dime of silver to make one. But he knew that these clay statues were not just clay statues, they had spirits. He knew about these spirits and he had dealt with them before. However, humans and demons were different and he felt that he should not get too involved. In fact, it was not that he had any special opinion of demons. There were not many good ones among them. What special opinion could he have? It was just that he had been a temple attendant for so many years and he knew a lot of things. He knew that some demons could use their supernatural powers and do good deeds. However, it was hard to get rid of one's nature. You could not tell when they would suddenly do strange things that made people's hearts jump. But these few, well, the blue dragon envoy, the white dragon envoy, the black dragon envoy, the red dragon envoy, and that strange dragon prince, and the soul of the Qiao family's child were different. Lu Laodao once overheard them preaching in the hall when he got up at night. That dragon prince talked about 3 views to the 4 demons. Lu Laodao listened for a while until his hair was wet from the night dew, then he went back to his room. In the middle of the next night he could not help but eavesdrop outside the room. Halfway through there was suddenly no more movement in the hall. After a while he heard the strange dragon prince say, "Ah, that old guy outside the room. Oh no, not old guy, oh my dragon cult sect leader elder? What are you eavesdropping on? I am teaching on behalf of the cult leader." Lao Dao knew that he was discovered, so he sighed and pushed the door open. He told the dragon prince who was attached to the golden statue that he couldn't see clearly. 3 views are not something that you can say. It's not something like, if you believe in the dragon cult, you must build 3 Taoist temples when you establish your own sect. Instead it referred to outlook on life, worldview and values. These 3 things. As he said this he remembered the past. Actually it hadn't been that long. Only a month had passed, but it felt like it had happened yesterday. He thought of Brother Xin in the courtyard of the Dragon King Temple, slowly drinking under the thin bamboo while talking to him about the water cloud force. From time to time she would say a few words that he couldn't quite understand, and then she would laugh. When Lao Dao thought of this he stood in the hall and sighed. Then he realized that the hall had quietened down. His heart tightened as he thought, Aya, how could I be so muddle-headed? These are demons after all and I have angered them. Unexpectedly after a breath's time that dragon prince suddenly cried out saying, Aya, you're right. Aya, the cult leader really said that night, and so on. Then he forced himself to talk for the whole night. What else could he talk about? Although he knew that Li Yunxin had taught these demons, he didn't know to what extent. According to the rules, after he received Li Yunxin's water cloud force without permission he couldn't teach it to anyone else. He didn't even teach it to Shirkuizi. So he picked up some of the things that happened when they were together in the past, and those demons listened attentively. Gradually, he felt that these demons didn't seem to be that afraid of people anymore. However, when he slept the next day he felt a lingering fear. Could it be that those demons had used some kind of innate ability to bewitch his mind? Then in a daze he felt unhappy. When Brother Xian was alive he always had a lot of courage in his heart. Even when he saw that big demon he wasn't afraid. Now that he wasn't here, although he heard that the child he reincarnated created this dragon cult, but still, Lu Laodao sighed. He walked into the house under the moonlight. The light in Shirkuizi's room was still on, which was a habit these days. Only after he cleaned the courtyard and went back to the house and turned off the light, did the woman turn off the light and go to sleep. When he walked out of the house he coughed lightly. This was also a habit. He told the woman that he was going to sleep. Then Lu Laodao pushed the door open, turned around and closed it. This house wasn't like the Dragon King temple he lived in the city of Wei. The walls were made of yellow earth. After he came, Shirkuizi used toilet paper to frame the walls, but when he lit a fire outside to cook the toilet paper would smell burnt. However, this smell didn't annoy Lu Laodao except that it was a little choking. On the contrary, he felt very comfortable. It was a fire. There was a woman making a fire to cook, so the burnt smell was a little like home. He felt that he would probably slowly settle down on Nanshan Hill. Slowly he turned around. There was no light in the house and the paper on the window was not very transparent. Therefore after he came in, It took a while for his eyes to adjust to the light in the house. Then he could see a person sitting by the rough wooden table at the end of the Kong, bathed in the moonlight. Lu Laodao sighed softly as if he was afraid that his heavy breathing would startle that person, so he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Then he heard that person say with a familiar voice, "I know that you have broken through the conception realm and reached the emptiness realm. You can't cultivate by yourself when you reach the emptiness realm. Without someone to guide you, it is easy to make mistakes. I thought about it and came." Lu Laodao gasped a few times, feeling that his breath was slightly hot and trembling. He looked around in panic, wanting to reach out to prepare something, but he felt that there was nothing he could do. After thinking for a while, he remembered that there was half a pot of cold tea on the wooden table next to that person, but it wasn't any good tea. After drinking it, his mouth was full of foam. After panicking for a while, he suddenly calmed down. He let out a long sigh and said, "Brother Exen is right. But when I reached the emptiness realm, I always felt that the snow mountain was unstable and the sea of qi was in a mess, so I didn't dare to continue cultivating." As he spoke, he slowly walked to the opposite side of that person, pulled a lame stool over and sat on it, so that he could see the person's face more clearly. That was really Brother Xian, a living person. He sat leisurely on the rattan chair, leaning against the back with his arms resting on the armrests. He didn't look at himself but tilted his head to look at the window. The window paper was originally a little yellow, but under the moonlight, it became bright white. He stared at the bright white window paper. He looked calm, but Lu Laodao saw that he was squinting slightly. The shadows cast by his eyelashes on his face would occasionally tremble slightly. His lips were also pursed, just like how he used to be. It seemed that in the next moment some faint, playful and surprising words would come out. This was Brother Exen. Lu Laodao let out a sigh of relief and said, "A few days ago when I circulated the qi to the 3rd level of the water cloud force and reached the Han Xiaoyang, I felt uncomfortable in my chest. I didn't care and continued to circulate the qi. Unexpectedly, after another 15 minutes, Qing Lingyuan, Jiaosuan, Air Men, and Si Zhukong all felt that something was wrong. I almost lost my breath." "What time was it?" Li Yunxin didn't move and only asked indifferently. "Just past the hour of the night. I thought the next hour would be the meeting of dragons and tigers. The time is wrong." Li Yunxin sighed slightly, still staring at the window paper. "Usually the hour of the night is correct. But the position of the South Mountain, the solar terms, the hour of the night a few days ago belonged to the Western Earth, so of course you would make a mistake. But you haven't touched that Shirqueezy these days? Otherwise you wouldn't have gone astray with the balance of yin and yang." Lu Laodao blushed and said embarrassedly, "Well, how can that be?" At this time Li Yunxin turned around and looked at Lu Laodao, finally smiling. "You thought I was dead. Now that you see me again, why aren't you excited at all? It's so sad." Lu Laodao didn't say anything. After a moment of silence he also smiled. "I know Brother Exen doesn't like that kind of tone. If I were to cry and say, 'Ah, you're not dead and what happened these days?' Brother Xian would feel annoyed and embarrassed. Maybe he would immediately run away and only return after 2 or 3 days." Li Yunxin smiled and sighed. "It's still more comfortable talking to you. Old Lu, I've missed you these days." The two of them sat facing each other for a while. Li Yunxin sat up straight on the rattan chair and was lost in thought again. Lu Laodao didn't know what he was thinking about. He sat with him for a while and saw that Lu Laodao didn't want to say anything. He quietly got up, took the teapot from the table, pushed the door open and went out. After a while there were faint sounds of people talking, cups clinking and firewood being carried from outside the room. Then slowly the smell of burning toilet paper wafted into the room. After a quarter of an hour, Lu Laodao pushed the door open again and came in. There was a wooden tray in his hand, a pot of tea and a pile of dried sweet potatoes on the tray. He gently placed the wooden tray on the table next to Li Yunxin and sat opposite him. He said, "There's nothing good. Brother Exen, fill your stomach first." Li Yunxin softly responded. Then he let out a long sigh. "Let's get down to business, old Lu. Let me ask you first. Since you know that I'm not dead and you've reached the emptiness realm, do you want to do great things with me?" Li Yunxin's sudden excitement surprised Lu Laodao slightly. But he also noticed that when Ting Qingshan said this, his eyes drifted outside the door and stopped on the dried sweet potatoes for a while. However, he didn't think too much about it, because what Ting Qingshan said required him to think carefully. But he only thought carefully for a moment. Then he said, yes. Li Yunxin looked at him seriously and said, I'm not a human anymore. I'm now the body of Dragon Sun Chuan. In other words, I'm a demon. Lu Laodao let out a sigh of relief. Isn't it better? What's the fun of being a human? And you have to know that there's a 3,000-year big demon in the Dongting Lake. There's a Taoist priest in the city of Wei. That big demon is not a friend and that Taoist priest is an enemy. Moreover, it was I who schemed to kill that 9th young master in Ling Kongzi. When I raised my eyes and looked around, there were strong enemies everywhere. Lu Laodao smiled. Brother Exen, I'm not the Hunyuanzi anymore. Now my real name is Lu Gongzan. Li Yunxin was silent for a while and said, so before I even treated you as a chess piece. Now I ask you if you want to do great things with me. I want to turn you from a hidden chess piece to an open chess piece. You'll return to the city of Wei and face many people and things. The Taoist priest in the realm of Wei will take action. Maybe soon there will be helpers. You'll become my signboard. You'll attract many people's attention and bear great risks. I like to scheme. But schemes may not succeed every time. Once I'm wrong, you may die. You'll die for real. You can't become a ghost cultivator. Lu Laodao smiled. Will it be glorious and imposing when you return to the city of Wei? Li Yunxin was silent for a while and laughed. You'll return to the city of Wei as the hierarch of the dragon cult. And I've made a lot of arrangements in the city of Wei. When you return, there will be gongs and drums, children clearing the way and believers kneeling to worship you. It'll be glorious and imposing. Lu Gongzan spread out his hands. Then what else can I say? A real man is born in this world, isn't it to be majestic and imposing? Then, let me tell you about the current situation of Wei River and city of Wei. Li Yunxin took a deep breath and began to tell Lu Laodao in a calm tone about the earth-shattering things in the cultivation world these days, but not known by mortals. So he talked for a full hour. After he finished, Lu Laodao blinked his eyes and sighed, such a world. But the ghost emperor? He frowned slightly. The emperor of the Li kingdom indeed has many people, but there are other people or things such as the dragon sun hatred mentioned by Brother Exen. Hundreds of millions of people in the Li kingdom know the emperor of the Li kingdom and they also know hatred. According to Laodao, I think there are more people who know hatred. After all, although the world is big, Brother Exen, you said that the Tulahan kingdom in the far west and the Quan kingdom in the far south would take more than 10 years to reach the capital of the Li kingdom on horseback. Such a long distance, maybe the people there don't know when the dead Emperor Li came to the throne, and they think that it is the previous Emperor Li who is managing the Li kingdom. But whether it is the Tulahan kingdom or the Quan kingdom, the people there all know the divine dragon sun and hatred, right? So, hatred obviously has more followers than the Emperor Li, but why is he not as strong as the Emperor Li? Or, in this Jianghu there are some famous people. The people who know them are no less than the people who know the Emperor. But why are those people not as strong as the Emperor? This is a good question, old Lu. Li Yunxin breathed a sigh of relief. No one told me about these things. But now that I have the body of Yin spirit, I am Qi Wen, and there are many people who know about this. I am afraid that the people who know about Qi Wen are more than the people who know about the Emperor Li. Why am I not as strong as him? I have experienced and thought about it for a long time, and I vaguely understand some of the rules. For example, old Lu, you do not have to worry about food and clothing and you worship a god at home. When you have nothing to do, you go to him and pray for peace in your home. You believe in him and respect him and you give him the power of faith every day. But he has never shown his divinity in front of you. Although you believe in his existence just like the common people in this world, how can there be anyone who truly believes in him? What they saw was something that could be seen, something that could be touched. They know that the officials in the city are people and they know the emperor. Although the emperor is unreachable, they also know that he is a person. He is a real person like himself. Every day he lives in the emperor's territory, obeys the emperor's laws, is controlled by the officials sent by the emperor, and has to pay taxes for the emperor. These are all real, inextricably linked things. People know that it is true and they know that the emperor is there. They believe that the emperor is there. If someone jumps out and says, well, maybe the emperor doesn't exist. Then what if the emperor's laws don't work? People will laugh at him for being crazy. But those gods, the gods that you worship in your home. If someone says, Well, maybe the god you worship is not there at all, maybe he doesn't hear you and he won't show his divinity. What are the reactions of ordinary people? I also know that he may not really show his divinity, I just want to be at ease, right? You have been a temple attendant for so many years, you must have heard this kind of thing a lot. So for me there are also two kinds of faith, strong faith and weak faith. You worship the god in your home, this is weak faith. You feel that he should be there but you are not very sure, and you are not sure that he will show his divinity in your home. The people in the world know that hatred is there, they scare the child when he cries. If you cry again, hatred will come and take you away. Even if you say that, who would really believe that hatred will come from the world and take the child away? This is still weak faith. Those who know me, Chiwen, those who know Wei River Dragon King, well, they know that there is a temple here. But, do they talk about it normally? Only when the weather is dry or hot will they sigh and say, "Oh my, why doesn't it rain, Lord Dragon King?" Forget it. Continue watering the vegetable garden. This is still weak faith. As for the emperor, you have committed a crime today and you have been caught and beaten, you have violated the emperor's laws. That is when you know that you have angered the emperor, violated the rules and are beaten. This kind of faith is many, many times stronger than the faith in your god, the faith in hatred and the faith in me, Chiwen. I call it strong faith. Think about it later. So many people believe so strongly in the existence of the emperor of the Li Kingdom. So many people believe that the Li Kingdom is the largest and strongest empire in the world. Since Emperor Li can rule such a huge empire, then Emperor Li is also mighty and imposing. Then, Emperor Li died. You go and tell an ordinary citizen that Emperor Li is dead. The citizen will say, "Oh my, Emperor Li is actually dead. Such a powerful emperor is actually dead." He will think about more things. If he is a citizen of the empire, then he will panic, be surprised and worry, will the world be in chaos after the emperor is dead? If there is chaos, the most unlucky people are the citizens. How good it would be if the emperor is not dead. There will even be people who sincerely, spontaneously, mourn and cry for Emperor Li from the bottom of their hearts. This kind of faith is already far more than strong faith. This is a kind of explosive super strong faith. Hundreds of millions of people, this kind of super strong faith, almost in a few days, added to the ghost of Emperor Li. The ghost emperor created in this way, of course, is strong. Chapter 161. After Li Yunxin said this, he narrowed his eyes slightly. As for why that black Bai Yanjun didn't take Emperor Li's soul away in time, this is the strangest thing. What he said was something that Lu Laodao had never thought of. But Lu Laodao was not a stupid person after all. After listening to him and thinking about it carefully, he understood. After thinking about it, he asked again, "But if that's the case, why don't you show your divinity?" Li Yunxin knew what he meant. He raised his eyebrows, poured a cup of lukewarm tea and took a sip, then looked at Lu Laodao. Because there are those stinky Taoist priests and stinky swordsmen. The people of Daotong and Kenzo, those low-level disciples, walk around the world. What do you think they do? When they see demons that often show their divinity, they say that demons have repeatedly appeared and caused trouble in the world, so they killed them. And demons themselves are not good things, and they also like to do bad things. So, when you see a demon in the wild, of course, you quickly cover the eyes and mouth of the child and run away in a hurry. When you get home, you don't dare to say it everywhere. First of all, I don't have a good impression of demons and I think it's bad luck. Second of all, I'm afraid that if I keep saying it, I'll really provoke demons. Look at those children shouting about ghosts in the middle of the night, and when the ghosts come, they'll be scolded by the adults. That's it. As for those big demons that low-level disciples can't afford to provoke, there's still the Dao Tong. There are only 100 known big demons above the true state, and they are scattered all over the world. There are also many fights between them. And the Daotong and Kenzo have hundreds of cultivators above the true state and they work together. Which big demon would dare to appear in the world again and again to recruit believers? Look at that ghost emperor, his cultivation is close to the two saints, but he was still killed by 5 cultivators at the risk of their lives. And yet he fled to the sky-piercing lake and ran into hatred. As Li Yunxin spoke, he shook his head as though he was amused and annoyed at the same time. 2 great demons. In such a situation, instead of helping each other, they started fighting again. Both of them are crippled. What a F*** king retard. Look at Daotong and Kenzo. Old Taoist Lu hurriedly smiled apologetically and poured more tea for Li Yunxin. But these few envoys of our Shenlong Jiao, from what I've seen over the past few days, they're all very good. They are not as savage as other fiendish demons. Li Yunxin shook his head and sighed. No one knew what he was sighing about. He looked at the tea that Lu Laodao had poured for him, then his eyes drifted to the dried sweet potatoes on the wooden plate. Laodao thought for a moment, then reached out and pinched a piece. Brother Exine, you can try this. Qinyong. That fellow Daoist made it himself. It's clean and chewy. Li Yunxin subconsciously reached out his hand. But it was just a movement and he quickly withdrew it. He looked at the dried sweet potatoes again and said in a low voice, I'm not hungry. This was the first time Lu Laodao saw him lose his composure like this. His eyes flashed and he put down the dried sweet potato. Li Yunxin was silent for a moment, then asked him, Are you tired? Lu Laodao shook his head. After all, I'm an emptiness realm cultivator. I don't get tired easily. Li Yunxin responded and was silent for a moment. Then he suddenly said, AI. Actually, the path of Shindao and the path of human cultivation, do you think there are any similarities? There are. Why do you think Daotong and Kenzo need to go through the heavenly tribulations? They abandon their feelings one by one and in the end they make themselves strange as if they're mentally ill. For example, they don't see humans as humans. From a certain point of view they've cultivated into demons. But you old Lu, think again. An ordinary person without any unforgettable experiences has always been raised in a rich mansion. He can't be said to have a noble character, nor can he be said to be wicked beyond redemption. He's just an ordinary person. Then one day you give him great power, open the door and tell him to go. Then this person walks into the marketplace and after a long time, this dress looks good, I want it. That beauty looks good, I want it. This mansion looks good, I want it. This beautiful world, this beautiful land, there are too many good things. Ordinary people will also be greedy and want, but they can only work honestly, occasionally swindle and spend some effort to obtain it. And this person wants it, and reaches out to take it. Because there are almost no opponents in this world. But how can this be done? The world will be in chaos. You say using morals and rules to restrain this matter? There will always be loopholes. Then we might as well renounce our feelings and abandon our desires. Without those desires, we can wholeheartedly seek immortality and the world will be much better. That's why Daotong and Kenzo have to cultivate their hearts and undergo tribulations. It's not all for the world but also for yourself. You have so many desires and they can be easily obtained, so why would you have the mood to focus on improving? Li Yunxin looked at Lu Laodao, but his eyes slid to the sweet potato for a moment, and then bounced away as if he had been electrocuted. As for Yin's spirits? Demons? They absorb the power of will and the power of faith. How can there be so many problems? Below the Taishang emotionless state, they can't be bothered to undergo tribulations. That's why you see demons do whatever they want, but in reality they are abandoning themselves. With so many great demons, if they manage them well, they might have more believers, more power of will and become stronger. But they have so many desires, to eat people, to look at their neighbors, to sleep for a year or two when they are tired, and so on. Demons also have desires and they don't know how to restrain themselves. So how can they fight against Daotong and Kenzo? Not to mention, to step into the Taishang emotionless state like the two sages, they need something else. This is the same for cultivators and demons. That's why Emperor Li is at the peak of the profound realm, approaching the two sages. But he can never reach the two sages. The peak of the profound realm is a threshold, there is no way to take advantage of it. Li Yunxin sighed. My parents told me that below the peak of the profound realm, as long as the demons have enough power of will, they can directly rush up. But once they reach that threshold, if they want to cross it, they have to go through the tribulation step by step, just like human cultivators. But human cultivators have been passed down for thousands of years, and almost from the beginning, they start to abandon their emotions and desires, step by step. And that demon is already in the profound realm. How do you expect him to go through those tribulations? Delusion tribulation? He wants the Taishang Dao. How can he let it go? So I say, why don't those great demons show their divinity and gather incense? I think they should also know this. When Li Yunxin said this, he suddenly fell silent. And fell silent for a long time. Lu Laodao listened to him in silence. At this time he sighed slightly. After a moment of hesitation, he reached out his hand and gently patted on Li Yunxin's knee. Brother Exen, are you feeling vexed? Tell me about it. He knew that Li Yunxin tonight was very different from before. In the past, Li Yunxin also laughed and scolded angrily. He often used words like idiot and retarded to criticize others. But at that time, other people's business was other people's business. Brother Exen stood on the shore and talked about them. But tonight Brother Exen, although he spoke with fervor and assurance, but Lu Laodao knew that he was also immersed in his emotions. Just now when he took the sweet potato he lost his composure, but in fact he lost his composure from beginning to end tonight. At this moment, Brother Exen couldn't control his emotions very well. Just like how he used to judge others, this person was full of loopholes. This Laodao sighed with mixed feelings in his heart, because he realized that at this time Brother Exen came to find him. He had given his most vulnerable moment to her. Li Yunxin turned his head. He stared at the white paper window for a while and suddenly asked gloomily, "Then, are you willing to part with your fellow Daoist?" Just now when he talked about demons Daotong and Kenzo he was very impassioned. But now he seemed to have lost his spirit and even his voice was a little hoarse. Lu Laodao didn't expect him to ask this. But looking at his expression it wasn't a joke. So he thought seriously, in this world there are always gains and losses. Fellow Daoist Xianxia took me in when I was in trouble and I am grateful for her kindness. I also love her. But now in this situation between you and her, if I leave her, Lao Yan said, she will be sad for some time but it will get better. Feelings, alas. I Laodao am a man of experience. I won't be able to endure it for long. At first I will feel sad but as time passes it will fade. In the end there will still be someone who can't let go. But I can't let go and it's just a thin thread that connects my thoughts with that person. Knowing that there is such a thread and such a person, it is no longer very tight. And Brother Exen, there will always be a lot of inconveniences if you leave me. That is a matter of life and death. At this point he heard a light sound outside the door. Then came the sound of extremely light footsteps, and the sound of the door closing very carefully. Lu Laodao suddenly stood up and looked at the door. But he only looked for a while then slowly turned around and sat down again. Alas. That's good. He sighed, that's good. Li Yunxin looked at him. Tell me what happened when you came here. Lu Laodao smiled bitterly. After thinking for a while he slowly told him what happened during those days. My real name is Lu Gongzan. I was a bandit in my early years and my nickname is Ghost Teller. I killed a constable just now and I have nowhere to go. Do you dare to let me in? Li Yunxin sighed and smiled. So after you said that she didn't ask you anything and only let you stay. In fact during these days demons and Daotong cultivators might have come looking for you. Whoever came would be a disaster. Xianxia can barely say that you have the concept. You're just an ordinary person who learned some body-strengthening martial arts. But she took you in. And she might die because of you, old Lu. How can there be such a sentimental and foolish woman in this world? Li Yunxin looked down. All the men in this world have hearts of stone like us. Lu Laodao slowly frowned. Brother Exen, I provoked a girl, said Li Yunxin. I don't know how I feel right now. Chapter 162. Actually, in the past it's not like there weren't any girls who tried to kill themselves for me. I've seen it before. I've actually seen it before. He looked out the window seemingly thinking about something that happened a long time ago. I've seen a lot of them. But this one is different. I thought she was a demon. A demon is different from a human. Cruel, cunning and heartless. But this one is very different. She subverted my perception. Li Yunxin frowned and said slowly. Actually, it's not just about feelings. Well, it's also because my perception of a certain group of people was subverted at that moment, causing a strong psychological impact. I found out that they can be like this. This is something I never thought of before. At first, he frowned as he spoke. But slowly he seemed to have found some clues as he spoke. Or perhaps the water finally found a gap and couldn't wait to pour out. His words slowly became smoother and his expression no longer looked dispirited. With every sentence he spoke he became more spirited. So, in essence, I hypnotized myself. That woman first expressed her affection to me in every possible way, so I thought she loved me. But I didn't have any true feelings for her, so I didn't value her love. I thought it was shallow. I was also confident in my own judgment, so the impression was even more profound. At that moment I heard her first. Then I found out that she really loved me and was thinking for my sake. On one hand it was an emotional subversion, and on the other hand it was a cognitive subversion. And I was so confident in my own judgment. So, this new reality completely destroyed my previous perception. I was stunned. Once my rational thinking stopped working and my defense mechanism was temporarily lifted, then the woman's intentional or unintentional hints and guidance made my habitual thinking take another path. Love. Xianxia stood up and frowned slightly. Yes. It's like this. It's not like I haven't experienced this kind of feeling before. It's because of an illusion. It's because of misdirection. It's because of a temporary breakdown in my defense. He turned to look at Lu Laodao. Am I right? Laodao coughed. Brother Xing. I don't know the whole story yet. Xianxia summarized the matter almost immediately. After that he stared straight at Lu Laodao. Don't you think so? Was it an illusion? Lu Laodao lowered his head and thought for a while, not answering his question. Instead he said solemnly, there's only one thing. Brother Xen, that palm of yours could have killed her. As for her father, according to what you said, his divine abilities are above yours, so killing her would be as easy as flipping his palm. But it only sent her flying to your side. Brother Xen, if her father wants to kill her, he can do it himself. But since you showed mercy, why did you send her flying to your feet? At that time you were 10 feet away from Dongting and you heard her before. If you had the intention to kill her, then wouldn't the Lord Dongting have shown mercy for nothing? I don't know the reason for this. But to be honest, I, Lu Laodao, think it's the Lord Dongting and the Red Lady who took the risk and used the trick of injuring herself to gain the confidence of others. Since he could make his daughter lose her life and become a ghost cultivator, he wouldn't care about her dying again. The Lord Dongting is in charge of the 1,000-mile Great Lake. His daughter is just convenient, but not irreplaceable. He slowly raised his head and looked at Xianxia. Don't you think so? But Xianxia didn't speak. He sat down again and just rubbed the rough teapot on the table. Lu Laodao shook his head slightly. It's not that. There are no other possibilities. But Brother Xen, you said that the most treacherous thing in the world is the human heart. If it's not the trick of injuring herself to gain the confidence of others, then the Lord Dongting was angry that she let you go and gave her a palm. That palm was merciful. If he could be merciful even when he was so angry, then when the Red Lady went back and the Lord Dongting thought carefully, he wouldn't do anything to her. She might be grounded and punished, but her life should be safe. Brother Xen, if you really can't let go of her, then deal with the things in the city of Wei. Lu Laodao patted his palm on Xianxia's knee. Then you go and deal with the Lord Dongting. At that time the outcome of the matter will be known. You said that everyone has an inner demon. It's just whether it will be noticed or not. Now your inner demon is better than others, isn't it? Alas. Xianxia sighed. Then he laughed. You've improved a lot. But Lu Laodao didn't laugh with him. He just looked at him worriedly. Brother Xen, it's not good for you to be like this. Or, we can postpone the things in the city of Wei. Then we can make a long-term plan. Xianxia stared at the sweet potato chips on the wooden plate for a while. Finally he pinched a piece and chewed it slowly in his mouth. No need. He closed his eyes and leaned back on the rattan chair. I know what my problem is. If you hide things in your heart for a long time, you will become weak. I have hidden myself for too long. Hurry up, finish these things quickly. I've had enough of hiding. You know, it's tiring. He shook his head against the chair. Then he pointed at the wooden plate. Bring me some of this. Okay. After a while they heard the rooster crowing. But you're very accurate. Xianxia opened his eyes and tilted his head to look at Lu Laodao. You can go with me to many places. And you've cultivated the water cloud force, which can prolong your life. But that one will probably die of old age. It's not a good result. Lu Laodao opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He unconsciously stroked his beard. His hair was originally white, but now it had become jet black, each strand translucent. He didn't look like a man in his 60s, but more like a man in his 50s. And after such a long time, You thought I was dead, but you didn't teach her the water cloud force. It's just the rules, Lu Laodao said in a low voice. Brother Xian taught me the way of the divine heart. The way of the divine heart can't be imparted without reason. Li Yunxin curled his lips. We're family. You don't need to say that. Make a copy for her before you leave tomorrow. She can protect herself. Li Yunxin continued to sit on the rattan chair. She closed her eyes and leaned back for a while, stroking her fan. He touched his fan and a purple talisman appeared in his hand. He casually tossed it to Elder Lu and said, I looted this from Zhou Xian after I killed him. It's annoying to carry it around. I always think of that old thing. You should give it to her. Lu Laodao carefully held the talisman and looked at it. He raised his head. Brother X and this treasure, *T treasure. Li Yunxin curled his lips. It'll be gone after one use. You keep it. Lu Laodao wanted to say something but hesitated. He put the talisman away. However, just as he put the talisman into his sleeve, Li Yunxin wiped his fan and threw something to him. Lu Laodao quickly caught it. It was a small bottle made of suet white jade. It's said that it can prolong one's life and promote blood circulation. It's something refined by the Pill Cauldron sect of the Xianxia sect. I don't need it. You can ask her to keep it. This time Lu Laodao finally stood up and sighed. Brother Xing. Laodao, I'm just talking to you. I'm sure you can see it clearly. Li Yunxin closed his eyes and didn't say anything. Lu Laodao looked at him for a while and sighed. But I won't take it anymore. You can't take it even if you want to. Lu Laodao laughed. After thinking for a while he finally said, Seeing you so troubled tonight, Laodao, I feel happier. Seeing that Li Yunxin didn't reply, he shook his head. I'll send it to her. Li Yunxin raised his hand and waved. Lu Laodao opened the door gently and closed it gently. The rooster crowed 3 times. It seemed to be the chickens raised by Xianxia in the courtyard. This sound attracted pheasants from unknown places, or roosters living in the house of a family living in the wilderness. Indistinctly, the sounds of crowing rose and fell one after another. No one could imagine that there were 2 people, 5 monsters, 1 ghost and 1 mythological beast living in harmony on this small platform in the middle of Nanshan Hill beside Dongting Lake. He sat alone in this room with his eyes closed for a while. Then he opened his eyes. The rooster crowed early, but it was still dark. He let out a long sigh gently and looked at the roof. Lu Laodao was a man after all, so he had to be a little sloppy. And it seemed that Xianxia didn't want to do too many things for him. After all, they had been together for less than a month. Then he saw a spider web on the roof. It was half broken and one corner was drooping. A spider with slender legs was hanging in the air. No one knew what it was thinking. Hong Yangzi. Li Yunxin subconsciously muttered to herself. He planned to let Lord Dongting fight with Dao Tong and Kenzo to death. Unexpectedly, Lord Dongting hit a trump card. Now the situation is reversed. Lord Dongting is sitting and watching him fight with the Daoist orthodoxy. In the middle of the lake, Hong Yangzi said that there was a way to distinguish the dragon aura on him. Damn it. What was the way? It was not the kind of game where the level was above the head. The skins of cultivators and demons were not damaged, and there was no such thing as, judging by the fluctuation of spiritual aura, one should be in a certain realm. If a person could not control and release his spiritual aura freely, and his spiritual aura leaked out so crazily, then he would not be far from death. He had to figure it out. How could he see through his dragon aura so easily? He didn't want someone to suddenly jump out and say, I know you're the dragon's son, when he was walking on the road. After the city of Wei, he had to go to Dongting. The dragon had 9 sons, but only Qi-Wen was in the transcendent state. The transcendent state and the true state didn't have a progressive relationship. The gap of one state was unreasonable. Why was Dragon 9 the only one? The 9th young master got along with Lord Dongting in a strange way. There was no other dragon son in the world who was accompanied by a big demon. Why did they get along with each other? Hong Yangzi. Hong Yangzi. Hong Yangzi repeatedly told him that the relationship between Lord Dongting and Qi-Wen was unusual. And Lord Dongting did show an unusual attitude to dragons. He, a 3,000-year-old big demon, was trapped here. Who was it? Li Yunxin closed her eyes and allowed these thoughts to churn in her mind. Then she opened her eyes again. The spider with slender legs on the roof was gone. He didn't know where it went. Li Yunxin stared at it for a while and snapped his fingers. A gust of wind hit the web and nailed the hanging corner to the wall. He stood up and pushed the window open. He saw the sky was getting brighter. Further away was the vast wild forest between Dongting and the city of Wei. In the dim light of dawn, the forest was a deep green, like a huge piece of dark green jade. Even with his eyesight, he couldn't see the city of Wei in the sky. The wild forest was so vast that it was almost as big as Dongting. He felt a familiar feeling. It was the urgent desire to conquer that day when he stood by the Wei River and saw the surging river for the first time. It suddenly became clear. This river and mountain, although it was only a small corner of the world, but it was always the strongest and most reliable support. Li Yunxin slightly lowered his head and remembered a word he said to Lu Laodao a quarter of an hour ago. To the old Daoist, perhaps it was just an extremely ordinary word. But for him, a family, he repeated in a low voice. He couldn't help laughing. Chapter 163. More than half of Taoshi Road in Liuhe Prefecture of City of Wei had collapsed. It was full of broken walls and ruins with green weeds growing all over it. There shouldn't be such a place in this famous city, but it had been deserted for a month. No one dared to touch it. Because half of the properties on this street belonged to Magistrate Zhao, who had gone to the capital to apologize. Although Magistrate Zhao was scolded by Fairy Ling Kong of the Langya Cave and wanted to resign. But Fairy Ling Kong of the Langya Cave was also said to have died? Maybe she had died in City of Wei, and Magistrate Zhao and the 3 prefectural magistrates had gone north. For a while, no one knew what to do with Taoshi Road. Of course, the common people didn't know these things. Only the rich and powerful in the city knew. But it had been more than 30 days since the night of the Dragon King's divine presence. But there was no definite news. People knew that a miraculous thing happened on Shaohun Street a few days ago. The shopkeepers on the street swore that they saw a deity wearing a red helmet and red armor telling them to leave quickly and that a powerful person was going to subdue a demon here. Later, the young master of the Yu family said that it was a righteous deed done by a powerful person of the dragon cult. People thought about it and felt that it was true. The dragon cult worshipped the dragon prince. Since they were disciples of the dragon prince, those deities wearing red helmets and red armor must be shrimp soldiers or crab generals. No one thought about it. Shrimp and crab would only turn red when they were cooked. People also knew that a Daotong cultivator came to the city of Wei of the Danding sect of the Xianxia dynasty. They also knew that Qiu died on the street. They wanted to send their family members to find out who it was, but they couldn't find out anything. So they were puzzled. The Daotong cave was a real fairyland in the eyes of the common people. People who came out from there were all immortals. Since Fairy Ling Kong died in City of Wei, why? There was no movement until now. The new cultivator didn't look like a big shot. Although Fairy Ling Kong didn't disturb anyone when she entered the city, she was able to denounce 4 imperial court officials at the Baohua gathering. How impressive was that? But this person didn't say or do anything. No one could understand Daotong's thoughts. As for the imperial court, anyone with some knowledge in the city knew that the emperor and the Zhao family were ruling the world together. The great painter of the dynasty died in the city of Wei without knowing why. At any other time in any other place, the sky would have been turned upside down. But in the city of Wei, people had almost forgotten about it. Because the city of Wei was under the rule of the Zhao family. But now the Zhao family and the imperial court had not taken any action. There was no news of the imperial court punishing them, and there was no news of a new official taking office. The official who was in charge of the city of Wei was not willing to take over this hot potato. He only showed up twice in more than 30 days and explained some things. After clearing out the treasury in the mansion, he ordered his attendants to drive 3 large carts of heavy boxes and never came back again. Therefore, only the official registrar, deputy prefect and other officials maintained the operation of this famous city with a population of hundreds of thousands. Naturally, there was no lack of help from the rich and powerful families in the city. Because he knew the complicated inside story, when he appeared on the ruins of Taoshi Road with a group of people and started to clean up the area around the Dragon King Temple, all the rich and powerful families at the city gate who knew about this matter were shocked. Who did this? But whose permission did it come from? Did something big happen that they didn't know? Some people went to inquire and investigate. Finally, they brought back a piece of news. They were people from Egret continent. They were all followers of the dragon cult. Egret town in Egret continent. There were about 100 households in Egret town, and more than 300 people were followers of the dragon cult. And there were more than a dozen villages and towns scattered around the wild forest, and there were also about 1,000 followers. More than 1,000 people believed in the dragon cult, and it wasn't some kind of method to turn around and worship other gods. According to what Li Yunxin said, twice a day, no matter when, must be in a place with water vapor such as a river, lake or inland, to scoop up a ladle of water, and recite a sentence or two. The leader of the dragon cult will enjoy immortal happiness forever and live as long as the heavens. And he repeatedly emphasized that twice a day, no more, no less. If it was too much, the vast sea kissed the dragon prince so much that he would get angry. If it was too little, the dragon prince would feel that it was disrespectful and would get angry. At first, people muttered that the dragon prince was too picky and difficult to serve. But the dragon cult always gave some small things. For example, toilet paper with some warning words written on it, a small cloth bag embroidered with a dragon head, and even 2 or 3 copper coins that were said to be blessed by the dragon prince. It was not given to everyone. Instead, it was given to a few believers who went to worship at a certain time every day. They were all poor fishermen, mountain people and farmers. The rich people of Egret town didn't care about these things, but for others who might not be able to pull a piece of new cloth for several years, these small things were attractive enough. So even if they were tired, they would still go and take a look. Since they wanted to see it, then they would just recite it. Slowly they found the benefits. For example, their family lived in the Pamir Mountains northwest of the wild forest, and occasionally went to Egret town to exchange some game for salt, but suddenly heard about the dragon cult. Anyway, they had to go back the next day, so they were not in a hurry, so they went to Nanshan to take a look. In the end, they received some small things from the dragon cult and learned about this rule. After returning to the Pamir Mountains, they scooped up some water and said a few words. Others were curious and asked what they meant. So they told them the meaning of these words and what they saw on Nanshan. Then they said solemnly that they could only recite it twice a day. If they recited it too much, the Dragon King would get angry. Sometimes a naughty kid asked, "Why must they recite it twice?" Then he would frown and stare and throw down 2 words stiffly and confidently: rules. In a clan society, the rules were the most important. The kid was scared and didn't dare to ask again. This was a very prestigious thing. This kind of prestige and satisfaction was hard to imagine for people of Li Yunxin's time. The kingdom of Qing was rich and the city of Wei was rich. This was something Li Yunxin knew. However, no matter how rich an ancient society was, it was still an ancient society. Around the rich city of Wei, what kind of people lived in the villages in the wild forest? Probably not 1 in 1,000 people could read. Hundreds of people had never left the wild forest in their lives. It was only 180 li from the city of Wei. In Li Yunxin's world, it was only an hour or 2 by car. However, in this world, there were hundreds of people, generations after generations, who had never left this 180 li. For them, the wild forest or even the Pamir Mountains, Copper Mountains, any mountain ridge or village was the whole world. As for the city of Wei, in their minds, it was almost in the category of neighboring countries. The people in the city of Wei might know the emperor of Li Kingdom, but the people in the mountains probably didn't know that the emperor of Qing Kingdom had changed. Even for some people like this, there was no hope and nothing new. But at least they were used to this kind of life for generations without any way to rise. If Li Yunxin was imprisoned in such an environment, he would probably go crazy immediately. Hunters went up the mountain to hunt and collect game, and the money they got was just enough to feed themselves. Farmers worked on 1 mu of land with backward technology and low output. If they could not starve to death with wild vegetables and game, it could be considered a good life. If they could really save some money and build a new house for their son, it could be considered a success of this generation. Every day they had to worry about food. This was only a big thing. What they saw and talked about was the people in the village. A month ago, the Niu family's daughter-in-law woke up in the middle of the night to find a snake coiled up on the windowsill. This matter could be talked about for a whole month without getting tired of it. And when they saw the Niu family again, they would feel strange. The snake was a little dragon. Their family had a little dragon coiled up in the middle of the night. Who knew if the child in the Niu family's daughter-in-law's belly was going to be successful? It was this kind of environment and this kind of people who knew about the dragon cult and the strange rules of the dragon cult. Life immediately became fresh, novel, and different from the rest. The cult members became mysterious and different in the village. And this rule, which people thought was provocative and difficult to serve, became more solemn and more like a rule because of its ritualistic nature. Probably everyone had experienced it. Li Yunxin had also experienced it. A normal person who originally had a low position in society and had toiled his entire life. Once someone asked him about some ancient rule or rumor that only he knew, his originally dull and lifeless face immediately glowed with a different light. His whole person immediately became solemn and steady. Then he cleared his throat, glanced at the crowd and said slowly, "This matter, there is such a thing." Li Yunxin understood this kind of society, understood this kind of people, and understood this kind of rule. Therefore, many small details that came from his hands made the dragon cult quickly spread in a very short period of time, and gathered a large number of pious believers for various reasons. Now the first batch of nearly 100 believers entered the city, and then gathered at the ruins of Taoshi Road. Among these people there were stonemasons, carpenters, tailors, and bricklayers. There were also barefoot doctors, hunters, and even old men who used to work as accountants. This group of people had experience, knowledge, and strength. Under the organization of a Taoist priest named Lu Gongzan, they spent only 3 days to quickly clean up a large area of land, and even put some stones and wood that could be used again. It seemed that they were preparing for a large-scale construction. Building something always required a lot of money. It was mainly divided into manpower and material resources. This group of people who called themselves Dragon Cult didn't seem to be lacking in manpower. As for material resources, they had already boldly cleaned up a lot of suitable materials from the ruins. Of course, these things weren't enough, so their progress stopped. About 100 people built temporary wooden shacks on a large piece of land that had been cleaned up. They lived, cooked, talked, and laughed, but no one knew what they were going to do. Some people went to ask, but these people only said that the cult leader ordered them to wait. This was not good. Such a large number of people gathered together, and they advanced and retreated in an orderly manner. If the prefectural magistrate or any of the 4 prefectural magistrates were still here, they would turn pale with fright and immediately dispatch the officials to put this group of people in jail. 100 people not doing production and gathering every day to talk about things that others couldn't understand. If this wasn't a rebellion, what was it? But now that the chief official wasn't here, the registrar and the prefectural magistrate didn't have the courage. They didn't want to rashly offend the rich and powerful family behind the dragon cult. The other rich and powerful families in the city also didn't want to interfere in this matter. Who knew which family in the city or which noble in the capital started this matter? Because after some investigation, they all knew that the dragon cult had a great influence in the Egret region. They originally thought that it was a smart person who started it. But now it actually came to the city, a place that they didn't dare to touch and didn't even inform anyone, and started it on its own. According to the laws of the Daqing state, what was a sect that didn't register with the government? It was a cult. And to be able to make such a great influence of a cult, it must be an experienced person. An experienced person wouldn't not know the rules. But now he didn't follow the rules. If they were to carefully ask, investigate, and take a look, they would realize that their previous thoughts were also wrong. This dragon cult not only didn't make money but often helped some poor followers. Those who wanted to understand more immediately retracted their tentacles as if they had been electrocuted. This was winning people's hearts. Except for the emperor, what kind of person would want to win people's hearts like this? Who dared to touch it? And who was so daring? Who did this? For a moment, all the rich and powerful families in the city of Wei were guessing, including the Yu family. The master of the Yu family, Yu Qi, was the head of a prosperous family. His family had been rich and powerful for many generations. Starting from a cloth merchant, they gradually had some influence and scale. Then they tried to climb higher branches, and with the help of other forces, after 10 generations of management, they finally had the power to speak in the city of Wei. In his generation, his family had met with disasters, one after another. Yu Qi was a smart and capable person, but his father passed away early. When he took over the family business, he was only in his early 20s. No matter how smart a person was, without experience, there would always be some tricks that he couldn't understand. And at that time Yu Qi didn't understand. Therefore the Yu family was in danger. Finally, he gave birth to his son Yu Meng, who was the reincarnation of a god. He helped him through difficulties again and again and made friends with some people. Only then did he realize that the natural disaster he encountered was actually a man-made disaster. Some influential people did things like this. He could kill you with a wave of his hand. If you understood his intention and obediently catered to him, you would immediately feel better. But if you couldn't understand, since you were an idiot who couldn't understand, it was better to get rid of you. Now the Yu family had passed the crisis, and Master Yu was no longer the Yu Qi who had just taken over the family. However, he knew the movements of the dragon cult in the city of Wei in the past 3 days. He frowned for 3 days. Things were not what he had imagined. Chapter 164. Now the Yu family was prosperous and was the richest family in the city of Wei. Looking at the entire Qin kingdom, it was also one of the richest families. But only Yu Qi knew how much of the Yu family's wealth belonged to him and how much belonged to others. As for who these others were, he didn't know, and he didn't know. He had so many properties under his name, but he didn't control more than 20% of them. If Li Yunxin knew this, he would say to him, "You are just a white glove." But in this era, in this world, this identity had another name, White Fan. Probably no one knew what the original meaning of this name was or when it was passed down. But if one tried to explain it, it could be a white fan gently waving, not attracting dust. The nobles in the capital also loved money. But the emperor didn't like it. He thought that fighting for profit with the people was a loss of benevolence and integrity. As a result, many people pledged allegiance to nobles, offering their wealth or talents in order to seek greater benefits. In many people's eyes, Yu Qi was an extraordinary and ruthless character. Because he didn't go to a certain family, but a certain family found him first. According to people, when Yu Qi first took charge of the Yu family, that nobleman took a fancy to his family business and casually played tricks on him. With this, the Yu family was almost destroyed. But Yu Qi managed to survive. A small businessman with such ability made the nobleman look up at him and then use a few more tricks. But he managed to survive one by one. This time Yu Qi really entered that person's eyes. He laughed at him for not knowing how to appreciate favors and cited how interesting he was. So he seriously set up a killing move. At this time, everyone thought that the Yu family would die. Who would have thought that Yu Qi would obediently and decisively submit to him? That nobleman asked him why he had wasted so much effort before, and now the result was the same. It was said that Yu Qi said at the time, "People love brave and heroic people and don't like cowardly and weak people." If he had been cowardly and offered his family business, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to sit in the main hall of the manor and talk today. A wise lord loves a hero. He wanted to be a hero. Hearing this, the nobleman laughed heartily. Not only did he not take his wealth, but he also asked him to work for him. After doing a few things, after 6 or 7 years, he was finally recognized. He became one of the wealthiest merchants in the Daqing state. But regardless of whether the truth of the matter was as the rumors said, that it was all because of Yu Xing's courage and wisdom that he resolved every crisis, or that there really was a god in his family, he was now used to this kind of feeling. Even the city of Wei would tremble when he waved his hand and stamped his feet. Although what he had might be lost at some point, at least for now, he felt that he could still do something. He considered himself a hero. How could a hero be willing to be a puppet or a servant for the rest of his life? Because of this, he had originally planned to have a good talk with the dragon cult. Or it could be said that he was just being polite. He didn't think that the people behind the dragon cult had the qualifications to be on equal footing with him. But that night, when the Daoist priest of the dragon cult went to his son's room and pretended to appear in his dream, Yu Xing was sitting in the study reflecting on himself. Every month he would reflect on himself, carefully combing through everything that had happened since he could remember. Because he knew that his current power and status could easily inflate one's ego. Doing what he did, once he became arrogant and did not grasp his identity and status well, he would be in big trouble. Unfortunately, like all the older people after a period of self-reflection, he was dragged into the memories of the past. Then he heard the thunder and heard the servants say that something had happened in the city. He drank 3 cups of wine that night. At that time he was still tipsy and didn't feel much panic. Seeing that he was calm and collected, the servants who were originally anxious also calmed down. At that moment, Yu Xing remembered the scene when he clenched his hands, took a deep breath, and walked into the nobleman's mansion with his head held high. At that time he staked everything on one throw and forced himself not to tremble. When he spoke he took a deep breath so that his voice wouldn't tremble. However, the nobleman sitting in the hall was drinking tea with his eyebrows lowered. What he remembered most clearly was that the nobleman was wearing a purple robe, embroidered with golden peonies. As he spoke he stared at the robe and thought, if I die here today I will be like the red and purple robe on the robe. If I escape today I will be as grand and rich as this golden embroidery. In the future I will be like this nobleman, a person like him. Therefore, when he saw the servant's panicked expression, he remembered the golden peonies on the robe. Suddenly he felt that what he wanted to do many years ago seemed to have been accomplished. But at that time he said, I want to be a hero, but where was that? Just when he was immersed in this kind of subtle emotion, someone came to report what happened in Yu Meng's room. Normally Yu Xing should be frowning, but after hearing this he suddenly laughed. There was actually someone who was not afraid of death and wanted to attack his family. This person was like him. At least like that time. Therefore there was the incident on the second day. Yu Qi very much wanted to meet that Jiaozhu of Shenlong Jiao and have a talk. And then, use it to do something else. He wanted to be a hero, not a puppet. But in these 3 days he found that the dragon cult was not the dragon cult he had imagined. He actually couldn't see through it. What did that group of people want to do? Until the 4th day someone sent an invitation. The invitation came from the dragon cult, and the poster called himself, The Vast Sea Kisses the Dragon Prince Li Yunxin. He said, the dragon cult wants to do good, hoping to meet the elder and talk about the opportunity. Yu Xing stared at the invitation for a while. But not because of the content. He had seen the content of this invitation many times. Some arrogant Jianghu people would always send him such an invitation. He looked serious and experienced, but he couldn't hide the awkwardness in his eyes and the arrogance in his words, just like when he was young. But the name sign was too strange. He had an impression of the name Li Yunxin. At first his son saved a young man named Li Yunxin on the roadside. He didn't know about it until a long time later, so he didn't take it to heart. Then his good-for-nothing cousin Xianxia went to the Baohua gathering and said there was a Daoist priest named Li Yunxin there. At this time Yu Xing remembered this name. It was said that he was a great painter, but he seemed to have some conflicts with the Langya cave. However, Fairy Ling Kong was very polite to him. It was hard to say about the matters of the immortals, so Yu Xing didn't dare to guess. After that, it was said that Li Yunxin and Fairy Ling Kong both died, because they angered the Dragon King or fought with the demons. There were many different opinions on these matters and there was no conclusion. In these troubled times, there was an unusual movement in the Shaohun Street a few days ago. People said that it was the cultivators of the dragon cult who killed the demons. But from Yu Xing's point of view, this matter was completely different from what happened on Taoshi Road a month ago. The Daoist priest from the Langya cave was in the city, so how could it be the turn of a rogue Daoist from an evil cult to kill the demons? That night, the one who went to Yu Meng's room was just someone who had a plan and took advantage of the situation. As for the name, if there really was a dragon prince, a mortal wouldn't send a visiting card if he wanted to see him. This leader of the dragon cult. Just from this visiting card he could tell that he had the craftiness and evilness of someone from the pugilistic world. He could indeed make some noise, but it would be hard for him to achieve anything big. So he calmed down a little. Calming down a little, he ignored the leader of the dragon cult for a day. He heard that the people on Taoshi Road seemed to have some problems with their diet and started to buy food everywhere, so he ordered people to invite the leader over. And that day he didn't just sit there idly. If he wanted to investigate something, there would be results. On the 5th day after the egret cult entered the city, Li Yunxin and Lu Gongzan entered the Yu residence. Through the back door. Previously he allowed Yu Meng to provide money and manpower to repair that small street, so he had already formed a relationship with the dragon cult. So he had to figure out everything as soon as possible. After figuring it out whether to subdue or exterminate them, it would all be up to him. But even with such a contemptuous attitude, when he saw Li Yunxin enter the main hall, he couldn't help but praise in his heart. What a dragon among men. He looked at a young man of 18 or 19 years old, tall and slender with a face like jade. A pair of sword-like eyebrows slanted to his temples, and a pair of starry eyes sparkled brightly. He wore a plain white robe and lightly waved a white paper fan made of bamboo in his hand. He looked elegant and handsome. Although he loved his son, he also felt that his son's appearance couldn't compare to that of Li Yunxin. Then he looked at the person behind him. He wore a green Daoist robe and looked to be between 40 and 50 years old. He also had a good face and a beautiful beard. Yuqi lightly tapped his fingers. With two people with such good appearances, it was no wonder that the dragon cult's momentum was so strong. When the two of them entered the main hall and stood down, that young man slightly raised his head and cupped his hands. I am the leader of the dragon cult, Dragon Prince Li Yunxin of the Vast Ocean Kiss. Greetings. After saying this without waiting for a reply, he lifted his robe and rushed to the side to sit. After sitting down, his eyes first drifted to the small table at the side. There was a teacup as well as a plate filled with dried fruits and candied fruits. That Li Yunxin glared fiercely a few times, then hurriedly retracted his gaze and sat down with his eyes on his nose on his mouth and his mouth on his heart. Apart from these three people, there were also maids and servants in the hall. The servants of the Yu residence always had a lot of experience. Now that they saw Li Yunxin's impolite appearance, they first frowned, thinking that this person was a bit too arrogant. That magistrate Zhao didn't dare to act like this when he saw our master before. But then they saw his fierce eyes staring at the plate of fruits, and they immediately understood. But in the end they were still people of the Yu family, so they forced themselves not to laugh. Looking at his dignified appearance, he was actually a country bumpkin who hadn't seen the world. This really was gold and jade on the outside but rotten inside. A servant who was serving tea at the side wanted to drink from him, but Yuqi slightly raised his hand on the table and the servant didn't say anything. Looking at that Lao Dao Lu Gongzan, seeing his leader like this, seemed to be anxious and angry but couldn't do anything. Seeing that it wasn't easy to say, "How did I teach you outside?" he glared fiercely at the young man on the seat and hurriedly cupped his hands towards Yuqi. Please forgive me, my leader has just come to the human world and doesn't really understand the rules and etiquette of the human world. I am Lu Gongzan, the sect leader of the dragon cult. Originally from the city of Wei, I believe there are people who recognize me. Yuqi calmly raised his hand, thought for a while and said, "Sit." This Lu Gongzan hurriedly thanked him and went to sit next to Li Yunxin. At this moment, Yuqi's good impression of that young man was completely gone. Just come to the human world? These words could be used to coax those villagers, but to say it in front of him. After all, they were two Jianghu people. Who knows where he found a beautiful young man, coaxed him to be the leader. And then this Lu Gongzan used some tricks to win people's hearts. In the future, when he grew up, he would serve this leader with good food and drinks. If things changed and he had to bear some misfortune, he could push this leader out. He had already used this kind of trick when he was young. But Yuqi picked up a cup of tea, brushed off the leaves, blew on it and took a sip. Without looking at that Lu Gongzan, he said, "I have heard of your name." That Lu Gongzan hurriedly said in surprise, "Ah, you actually know. You used to be called Ghost Teller." Yuqi put down the cup. "You used to be a bandit." That sentence of surprise of Lu Gongzan was instantly stuck in his throat, and he was so embarrassed that he couldn't say anything else. "I was a bandit first. As for my reputation, it was still okay. But I was a bandit after all. After that, I left Liang and went to the Dragon King Temple on Taoshi Road to be a temple attendant. After that, there were some incidents, huh?" Yuqi glanced at that Lu Gongzan and only said that he didn't tell him the whole story of him killing Inspector Yin. But a magician, a swindler now also wanted to visit his residence. He had never cared much about his background. Since this Lu Gongzan had made such a big fuss, then he could also not stick to one pattern of subduing a talent. But today he came with a golden jade leather bag and said some nonsense about the Dragon Prince's first time in the human world. Did he think he was easy to coax? If he wanted to investigate, he could still find out a lot of things. As expected. After saying that Lu Gongzan couldn't sit still anymore. Sweat seeped out of his forehead and he hurriedly stretched out his two hands, waving them in front of his body. But very quickly he felt that it was embarrassing and hurriedly put them down. He only said, to the public. Ayaya, it's hard to say. Although the others in the hall didn't know what their master didn't say, seeing this Lu Gongzan's calm and unhurried manner, now he lost his composure. Finally, someone couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hearing this laugh, Lu Gongzan seemed to be even more embarrassed. He just cupped his hands towards Yuqi but couldn't say anything. Yuqi was still sitting upright and his face didn't show any sadness or happiness. He said, "Earlier someone from your sect sneaked into my son's bedroom late at night and said some things. Although I don't believe it, I still admire those who have such methods and courage. That's why I helped you. But don't think that because of this, my Yu clan will fall for the tricks of you magicians. I still know about your matters. And that Li Yunxin. Is he really the one in front of us?" Chapter 165. Lu Gongzan looked troubled as if he was hesitating. But Yu Qi smiled. "The master of the dragon cult beside you is probably a fisherman, right? It's rare for him to have such a good appearance. He was originally in the Lu family village of the Chongpu Lake. It's not easy for you to find him." After saying this, Lu Gongzan became even more exhausted. He didn't even have the strength to cup his hands. This show of power came fast and fiercely. It seemed that his momentum was really gone. As for the master of the dragon cult, he just sat there blankly and kept looking at Lu Gongzan. He didn't know what to do or what to say. Seeing the two like this, Yu Qi laughed in his heart. He leaned back in the chair again. Someone had already replaced the cup of warm tea that he took a sip of. "Tell me about your means." He felt more secure. He felt that he had roughly known the background of the other party. He just needed to hear some details that he didn't think of. For example, how did things develop? How could he be so bold? And he already had a vague inference about these things in his heart. It was his special skill to figure out the background of the other party with a few words. Lu Gongzan seemed to be finally convinced by him. He cupped his hands and said with a bitter smile, "You deserve your reputation. You're really a great man. Since that's the case, I won't beat around the bush in front of an honest person. I'll tell you everything. But if I tell you this, hee. Although you're a rich family in the city of Wei, you have to sit tight. The way we Jianghu people do things is quite different." Yu Qi took another sip of tea and didn't say anything. Lu Gongzan snorted and said, "Do you know the general trend of the world now?" Hearing his words, his tone and his expression, the servant girl wanted to laugh again. Yu Qi's face remained calm. He said indifferently, "Tell me about the general trend of the world." That Lu Gongzan seemed to want to regain some ground because he had just suffered a blow. Therefore he coughed twice and circulated his qi before speaking in a deep voice. "Today the Daqing state is at peace and the emperor is ruling from above. This is the era of peace and prosperity that the sages mentioned. As for the heroes of our generation, if we want to make a name for ourselves, we need a chaotic world. I, Lu Gongzan, have been lurking in the city of Wei for so many years. I have learned some divine Taoism and have been waiting for the right time. Now the time has finally come. Magistrate Zhao is no longer in Weiqing and the 3 prefectural magistrates are no longer in their positions. The people inside and outside the city are in a state of panic and don't know where to go. It's the best time for us to make contributions. Now I've pulled this dragon cult together and gathered some people. After that, not only did I not collect money, but I also wanted to build irrigation works, build roads and open mines. In this way the people inside and outside of Weiqing will be more and more loyal, and the dragon cult will be more and more powerful. When the next magistrate comes to Weiqing, the dragon cult will already have tens of thousands of followers. How could he not value me as the commanding elder and the master of the dragon cult? At that time I will no longer be a Jianghu bandit, but a distinguished guest of the magistrate. When I have unified all the people in Weiqing and built a relationship with the magistrate, I will be able to live a carefree and happy life." Lu Gongzan was so excited that he left his chair and paced a few steps on the spot. "But the only thing this plan lacks is you." Yu Qi pretended that he didn't understand and replied with an "oh" with a smile. That Lu Gongzan seemed to think that his words had coaxed Yu Qi. He smiled and said, "Building irrigation works, building roads and opening mines all require money. But this money is just like dung to me. You are a merchant's family, and you have had enough of being bullied by the officials in the city, right? I am here to help the dragon cult. When we succeed, you will be a friend of the dragon cult and I will share Weiqing with you." Yu Qi finally couldn't help but laugh, very happily. Although his servants and maids weren't sure what their master was laughing about, they had to laugh along with him. They had to laugh or their master would feel bored. And they couldn't laugh or they would lose their sense of propriety. In the midst of such laughter, that Lu Gongzan showed a confused expression that appeared several times since he entered the hall. For public, why? Yu Qi stopped laughing. Everyone's laughter came to an abrupt halt. He shook his head and pointed at Lu Gongzan. So the general trend of the world you mentioned actually refers to the city of Weiqing? Do you think this city of Weiqing is the world in your heart? Lu Gongzan didn't know what to say. Yu Qi laughed again. Let me ask you, even if this city of Weiqing is the world in your heart, if you want to build water conservancy, build roads, open mines, I will still pay for it. Have you ever thought that you are seeking death by doing this? Lu Gongzan was even more confused. He blinked his eyes and his voice seemed to be trembling. Please, teach me. Yu Qi's face turned cold and he snorted. Previously when I saw hundreds of dragon cult people running to Taoshi Road, I thought you had a powerful background. Now it seems, it's because you don't know death. Jianghu people hee. You uncultured people think that just because you know a few words, have some smarts and understand the common customs, you deliberately speculate the general trend of the world? My Yu family is bullied by the officials in this city of Weiqing. Ah, what a joke. Even the magistrate of Weiqing Zhao Su had to send an invitation to see me. Lu Gongzan's face became paler as he listened. He stood still and seemed to be at a loss. Yu Qi stopped laughing and stared at Lu Gongzan for a while and snorted coldly. Building water conservancy, building roads, opening mines, is that something people like you can do? Recruiting followers, gathering people, is that something you can do? You openly bought people's hearts under the bright sun. Do you want to make friends with that magistrate? You are rebelling. Hearing this, Lu Gongzan took 3 steps back and sat back on the chair. He was stunned for a while with a pale face and then he hurriedly said, You save me, save me. Yu Qi shook his head slightly, looked down and drank a few mouthfuls of the new tea and then said, It's not impossible to save you. I just said, it depends on whether you want your life or money. Lu Gongzan said blankly, I don't have, it's your dragon cult. Yu Qi put down the teacup and looked at him. There are some things you can't do but some people can. I think you are a smart person but your identity and status make you ignorant. People of different levels have different views on things like knowledge. In the eyes of those fishermen and farmers, they see their homes, their villages and towns. What about you? Are you a hero in the city of Weiqing? Yu Qi shook his head and smiled slightly. It's a pity in the past. If I knew there was such a person like you, I wouldn't have let you be buried for so long. A person like you at your level is already far-sighted. You can see the situation of the Weishui River in the city of Weiqing. But to talk about the general trend of the world, it's not something you can see. Yu Qi said this and sighed slightly. He subconsciously looked down at his robe, purplish-red with golden embroidery. He only took a glance. When he raised his head again, his tone was softer and calmer. Maybe it was because Lu Gongzan had been scared by him, or maybe it was just because he was in a good mood at the moment. Building bridges and paving roads is done by the gentry and nobles, because this is a good thing for the village and also a good thing for the magistrate. But if you people do it, it's not a good thing to say. Yu Qi thought for a while. My Yu family is said to be a rich family but not a tyrant. Your dragon cult is just a motley crew and I don't have any interest in it. But I appreciate that you are a talent, so I will give you a chance. Speaking of this, he paused for a while. Lu Gongzan understood and hurriedly said, Sir Yu, please give me a clear path. This is a clear path. I will allow you to do what you said just now and I will give you money. Yu Qi looked at Lu Gongzan and said, But do it in the name of the Yu family. First, I want to see how capable you are. Second, you will do another thing for me. Yu Qi lowered his voice slightly. Investigate the whereabouts of those people in the Wanshun escort agency in the city of Weiqing. If you find this, you will be a member of the Yu family from now on. In the future, not to mention magistrate. So what if you are the governor of a province? Lu Gongzan opened his eyes and seemed to think carefully for a while and then said, Then this dragon cult is, still in my hands? You really don't want anything else? He said this as if he didn't remember the second half of Yu Qi's sentence. So what if you are the governor of a province? He was still thinking about the pitiful power in his hands. Yu Qi smiled, yes. Lu Gongzan then became happy. He first chuckled and then a series of flattering words were sent over. When he came, he pretended to be a master and after being drunk he put on a heroic look. Now that he got what he wanted, he finally showed his original appearance. Those servants and maids frowned, and even Yuchi didn't like him. After a few words, he carefully looked at the hierarch of the dragon cult, who had been sitting like a wooden chicken, and then waved his hand to send them out. After the two disappeared outside the door, Yuchi frowned again. When the maids came to change the warm tea, he waved his hand to signal them to leave. Then he stood up and moved his hands and feet, feeling that the robe didn't fit him. Then he picked up the tea on the table and drank it in one gulp and then said, "Mr. Lee, what do you think?" A middle-aged man with a clear face and no facial hair walked out from behind the screen at the side of the hall. He walked until he was 2 steps away from Yuchi and then raised his head that had been lowered but still frowned. "Sir, you that Lu Gongzan didn't tell the truth." "You think so? Just now I asked young master to take a look. Young master said that the person he saved was indeed the same as the hierarch of the dragon cult, Li Yunxin. We went to Chongpu Lake to investigate, and it was true that Li Yunxin was originally from the village and he was found by Lu Gongzan. I also asked someone to ask the disciples of the Lingshu Sword Station. They all said that Li Yunxin, who was saved by young master and showed up in Qionghua building, was dead. I thought it was possible that he faked his death. It's probably impossible. First, the people in the 2 stations only said that he was dead, his soul scattered. They didn't tell us the reason, thinking that it was a matter of the Xian men, and we couldn't understand it even if they told us. But it must have been certain. Second, that Li Yunxin is said to be a more brilliant painter than the imperial advisor. He made a painting in Qionghua building on the spot. This kind of person wouldn't lower himself to mingle with those mobs. Second, he really didn't die. This kind of person, someone who can make a painting, has never been seen in the public. Or have you heard of such a person? When Mr. Li spoke, Yuchi listened calmly as if he was talking to someone of the same status as him. Now that he was asked, he seriously thought for a while and answered, "I've never heard of him. They only said that there is an expert who can make a painting, but it seems that no one has ever seen an expert who can reach this level." Mr. Li let out a light breath. That's it. How could such a person be allowed to wander about outside? So I concluded that the dragon cult's hierarch is a fake. If he wasn't a fake, he wouldn't have dared to come out like this. Previously, I said that Lu Gongzan's knowledge was shallow, and I can see it from this. He has schemes, but they are all Jianghu people's methods. It's fine to bluff those boorish fellows, but if it's something else. You're right, mister. I also think the same. Sit down, mister. Mr. Li didn't refuse and sat down. After sitting down, he lightly knocked on the table. You must have thought of all these. Otherwise, you wouldn't have paid Lu Gongzan to do things. Yuchi also sat down with him, a smile on his face. Why do you think so? Mr. Li shook his head slightly and smiled. There are people who look alike in the world. But exactly the same? That's rare. Did you find another one outside the city of Wei near the Dongting Lake? Hey, I'm such a cautious person I won't believe it. Yuchi smiled and said nothing. Mr. Li continued. Besides, a few days ago, that person went to young master's room and pretended to be a ghost in his dream. That Lu Gongzan used to be the temple attendant of the Dragon King Temple on Taoshi Road, Hunyuanzi. As for how powerful this person is, we will know once we investigate. He definitely wouldn't do this. Look at his attitude today. First he pretended to be profound, then he pretended to be impassioned, and finally he became vulgar. This kind of person will never achieve anything great. If he did all of this, the dragon cult wouldn't be what it is now. So, there must be a master behind it. This master, you have an idea, right? Yuchi nodded slightly and waited for him to continue. But after a while he looked up and found that Mr. Li seemed to be deducing to his heart's content. He was waiting for him to continue. He coughed a little awkwardly. Mister, tell me your opinion first. Mr. Li smiled. If I had to guess, it should be the new Immortal from Shangqing Danding sect in the city of Wei. Do you know that a few days ago, after the fierce fight on Shaohun Street, someone saw that Immortal at the scene of the incident? Chapter 166. Also, the dragon cult worships the dragon prince. We sent people to investigate the South Mountain. On the so-called golden statue of the dragon prince in Nanshan, there really was a monster that spoke with a demonic aura. You and I both know that the cultivators of the Daoist sect can't stand demons doing evil. But now, The demon is attached to the golden statue. It's fine if it's just a blessing, but now it's gathering thousands of people. If it wasn't for the heavenly abode, how could they ignore it? Hearing his words, Yuqi let out a long sigh and clapped his hands. Wonderful. I thought I had thought about it thoroughly, but I'm not as far-sighted as you. When I said I would pay for him, I did have this in mind. I think there is someone behind him, and I don't know why there is a person with the same face as Li Yunxin. The heavenly abode's cultivation is profound, so it's not difficult for them to change their appearance. Sir, your words have solved all my doubts. But in your opinion, what should we do next? Mr. Li smiled and leaned towards Yuqi. What you are thinking, I am clear about it. But what you're planning is more dangerous than what happened 19 years ago. We can't make a mistake. In my opinion, this matter is good for us. This benefit doesn't only refer to those escort companies, Jianghu people, but also in the long run. After saying this, he waited for Yuqi's reaction. Yuqi coughed and thought for a while, then said, Sir, you're right. Mr. Li smiled proudly. Then, let's wait and see. They'll probably say, let's wait and see. Li Yunxin put down the bowl and let out a long breath. This stall was set up by the roadside, selling sour plum juice. It was cooled with crushed ice and well water. Drinking a bowl of sour plum juice on a hot summer day where one couldn't even open their eyes was truly refreshing. He sighed again and said, Give me 2 more bowls. Lu Laodao hurriedly said, 1 bowl is enough. At my age it's better not to be greedy for cold. But Brother X, and even so, what's next? The waiter served the sour plum juice. Lu Laodao waited for him to leave before saying, They plan to take it slow and see, so they must still be on guard. A man like him would not have believed all that I had done just now. In the future our sect will still be hindered, so Yuqi will definitely place people in the sect. Brother Exen, if you ask me, why don't you spend some effort to activate your divine ability and we'll raise some money ourselves? Otherwise, if we only solve the problem in front of us in the future. Li Yunxin shook his head and smiled. He picked up the bowl and drank half of it in one gulp. He was so comfortable that he frowned. Lu Laodao sighed and said, Alas. Why bother with him? The old Daoist is saying that to me. He is a very important person. But for you, Brother Exe, he's not someone worth looking at. When I saw their eyes in the hall just now, I felt sorry for you, Brother Exen. Li Yunxin smiled again and put down the bowl. He said like he was coaxing a child, Okay. I'll tell you, don't sigh. Lu Laodao immediately stopped talking. Li Yunxin thought for a while and said, Do you think I really care about the dragon cult? Lu Laodao blinked his eyes in confusion. Dragon cult, cat cult, whatever cult, I don't care about any of them. When I first created this thing, it was for my power of faith. At that time Long Sun and Lu Ling had just died and I didn't know if they were dead or alive. I also didn't know Bai Yunxin's whereabouts, Lord Dongting and the people of Heaven's abode, so I hid and waited for the right time. Later, after understanding the general situation, I tried to collect some power of faith to make myself stronger. But collecting power of faith would definitely attract people's attention, so I created this dragon cult. First to deceive people and second to make them suspicious of each other so that I could reap the benefits. But after that, the Li Kingdom incident, the Qingliangzi incident. And that Lord Dongting was far smarter than I thought. Or rather, he wasn't smart, he was strong enough. Once he was strong enough, many schemes would lose their effectiveness. So I had to change my plan. But old Lu, you see, from the beginning to the end, the dragon cult was just a tool. I didn't have to do anything. Now my identity can be considered half public, but in the future it will be completely public. At that time more people will know and believe in me, and there's no need to have a cult. Actually, I don't really like this thing. I don't like mind control. Hearing this, Lu Laodao was stunned. After a while he said, Then, this dragon cult is useless now? Li Yunxin drank up the remaining half bowl of sour plum juice, and looked at Lu Laodao seriously. No, now it's very useful. Or this dragon cult, these ignorant people, these ordinary people, are the key to whether I can keep my life and then solve the problem in the city of Wei. These days I have been running back and forth, doing a lot of things, saying a lot of words, just for the current situation. To let the people of the dragon cult enter the city, so that I can put on a show in front of someone. I've done all of this just for a single purpose. This purpose is the key to my victory, and this key can be achieved by using the dragon cult. The dragon cult is a layer of my cover, then it is another layer of cover for the dragon cult. I don't need it to cover for a long time. More than a month is enough. He made the matter sound so serious that old Taoist Lu frowned upon hearing it. In the end he couldn't help but breathe lightly. You can think about it in a few days. Seeing him like this, Li Yunxin laughed. Based on the current situation you probably can't understand it. But in a few days I will do some things and you will probably understand it. How smart you are depends on that time. Lu Laodao knew that he was a playful person, so he didn't ask further. However, although the purpose was a matter of life and death for both of them, he always had an inappropriate and relaxed sense of curiosity in his heart. Perhaps in this world, only when he was with Brother Exen and doing these things that were walking on a cliff on a tightrope, could he have this contradictory and strange sense of steadiness and relaxation. What Brother Exen did in the city of Wei was already a stroke of genius. He really didn't know what he would do this time. He had just entered the Xianmen, so he didn't know much about many things and backgrounds. However, it didn't prevent him from knowing the huge gap between the transcendent state and the true state. Lu Ling was at the peak of the transcendent state. His strength was far above Brother Exen and he had many magic treasures. It was almost effortless for him to kill Dragon Sun, who was at the same level as him. However, later when he fought with Bai Yunxin, the great demon of the true state, he couldn't fight back at all. Right now Yunzi in the city of Wei was a true state. If Brother Exen didn't set up so many deceptions to make Yunzi suspicious of the Lord Dongting, Bai Yunxin couldn't make a move. If it wasn't Yunzi, but a reckless man or a true state cultivator who thought highly of himself, today wouldn't have happened. It was good to be smart and think too much. However, he was afraid that he would meet someone smarter. At that time it would be a disadvantage. But he still wanted to know. In a few days when Yunzi saw through the truth, what else could Brother Exen do? Li Yunxin saw his expression and smiled. Hey old Lu, are you afraid? Lu Laodao sighed and smiled bitterly. It's good if I am afraid. But now I am really not afraid. The Taoist of the true state is in the city of Wei. We are going to die soon. But I am really not afraid. This is really, alas. Li Yunxin laughed out loud and pointed at him with her finger. Why else would I say that I love talking to you? You are really a wonderful person. Therefore old Master Lu also laughed with him, left an extra large coin, got up and left. The Yu family was very efficient. On the second day he sent people and goods over according to the previous agreement. Everyone was shocked that the Yu family was involved in this matter. Later they found out that they were working for a nobleman. But no one knew whether it was the nobleman who started the dragon cult or recruited the dragon cult for the nobleman. But no one paid much attention to it since it had come to this point. They said they were going to rebel because they didn't know who was behind it. Now they knew that it was the Yu family. Many things and rules only applied to ordinary people. Other things and rules might involve some officials and rich families. But with the background and power of the Yu residents, it was very difficult to have any established rules that could really restrain them. Their rules were just a few words from someone behind their back. So after 3 or 4 days, half of Taoshi Road that no one cared about was cleaned up. The Yu family showed their amazing power. Weiqing City had a population of more than 300,000, but they sent out almost 3,000 people in 3 days. Of course, it was not 3,000 people who ran to the ruins to pick up the bricks and tiles. But there were people in charge of people's food and there were people in charge of animal feed. There were famous doctors in the city and there were people who were good at human resources management. These people took up 100 or 200 people. The other 2,000 people were transferred from various villages by the Yu family, and they entered the city in batches. They did things without hesitation, and their professionalism was far beyond that of the first 100 people. Li Yunxin sat in a temporary awning not far from the construction site. He squinted his eyes and looked at the bustling scene and couldn't help but sigh. He understood a lot of things, but it was hard to understand if he didn't see it with his own eyes. For example, he knew that the Yu family was rich, but how rich were they? The Yu family's mansion that occupied half the street didn't shock him enough. It was really not easy to shock a person who was used to skyscrapers in this era. But these days he had a deep understanding. So many people were attached to and under the command of this rich family. And most of them didn't just have an employment relationship, but a vassal. They served a big family for generations and their loyalty was engraved in their bones. The Yu family in the secular world was like this. Lord Dongting had been operating in Dongting for 3,000 years and he never left the lake. He didn't know how terrible his hidden power was. As for the Daoist orthodoxy and the sword sect, just the appearance of these two individuals was enough to make him want to gamble his entire family's life for them. They were even more powerful and terrifying existences. Thinking of this, he breathed a sigh of relief, opened his folding fan and waved it. Lu Laodao finished talking with several newly promoted small leaders of the cult outside the awning. He asked them to leave and then he turned around and walked in. Those small leaders were all fishermen and two of them were rich families in Egret Island. They glanced at Li Yunxin curiously and then left. When they talked to Lu Laodao they seemed solemn and serious, but their eyes to Li Yunxin lacked respect and awe. They knew that this beautiful young man was the incarnation of the Dragon Prince, the master of the dragon cult. However, it was just like people believed that the emperor was the son of the god of heaven. People in remote villages of the empire would think so. But when they really met the emperor and got along with him for a few days, the original sacred atmosphere would gradually fade. They knew that he was just a person with terrible power. What's more, Dragon Prince? People believed it when they couldn't see it. But when they saw it, they didn't believe it so much. Li Yunxin knew the importance of mystery in religious beliefs, but he didn't mind it. Soon they would understand everything. Lu Laodao walked in, picked up the pottery pot on the table, poured a bowl of herbal tea for himself and drank it quickly. Then he wiped his beard with his sleeve. Brother Exon, is there something on your mind again? When did I not have anything on my mind? Li Yunxin slumped on the rattan chair as if even waving the fan took a lot of effort. I was thinking that it was the right choice not to run away from the city of Wei. After taking over the city of Wei, I finally have a place to settle down and run my business. With my identity, I'm afraid I can't escape no matter where I go. This is called the protagonist's halo, trouble. Lu Laodao ignored the last sentence as usual. Why are you suddenly thinking about this? Looking at these you family. Bus. Li Yunxin waved the fan lazily again, then closed it with a swish and pointed a few times in the distance. See? Among that group of people I have found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, this is the 16th. Lu Laodao hurriedly turned around and looked at the crowd carefully. However, the people coming and going were all wearing gray and coarse clothes. Plus it was summer, the weather was dry, so it was hard to distinguish. He had to ask, who is Brother Exon talking about? Li Yunxin slowly straightened up. At this time, Lu Laodao heard a slight clatter sound, and then noticed that Li Yunxin's left wrist was wrapped with a thin iron chain. He had seen people wearing bracelets but he had never seen an iron chain. But when he took a closer look he found that the small chain was exquisitely made. It was like a thick iron chain was shrunk by a dozen times. Every link and every buckle was meticulously made. He heard Li Yunxin whisper, "You are also a cultivator, so you should know that the spirit of a cultivator is far more powerful than that of an ordinary person. But the spirit is attached to a person's body, so you can't see it even if you open the third eye. But if you see it in other ways, you will find that the spirit of a secular person is only a layer of faint light. But these 16 people, 17, their spirit is dazzling. They are all cultivators." Chapter 167. Hearing this, old Daoist Lu turned around abruptly. The emptiness realm's spiritual power that he had cultivated for over a month filled all the meridians in his body. In an instant, his hair stood on end and his sleeves fluttered even though there was no wind. "Brother Exon, have they come to kill us?" But Li Yunxin smiled and waved his hand. "Don't be so cruel. He's a guest from afar." He stood up and patted Lu Laodao's shoulder. Then Lu Laodao's spiritual power was calmed down. Laodao was slightly surprised. "Brother Xiu," the spiritual power increased and surged, but it couldn't be stopped immediately. It needed to be calmed down slowly. In Li Yunxin's previous world, people who practiced martial arts had to restrain their spiritual power after practicing boxing. But now Li Yunxin just patted it for him. Lu Laodao was surprised and then happy. "Brother Exon, you've improved again." Li Yunxin couldn't help but laugh. "What do you mean by improved? You speak like a beginner. The Chiki's body is a transcendent realm monster. Even without the power of will, the spiritual power will still increase slowly. Not to mention this season." He didn't care about the cultivators in the crowd. Instead he walked out of the shed slowly, squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. Then he said slowly, "It should be the bean seeds." Lu Laodao was a little confused. He didn't know why he suddenly said this. But Li Yunxin stood outside the shed for a while and patted the folding fan. "Let's go. Since there are people here, let's go out of the city and have a look." After saying this, he flashed and appeared in the ruins outside the shed in the blink of an eye. With another step he was dozens of feet away. Lu Laodao didn't know why, but he knew that Brother Exen wouldn't just look at the scenery. Looking at the busy crowd behind him, he gritted his teeth and used his divine ability to catch up. Soon they went out of the city. There were 1 or 2 people following them. It was noon and the sun was scorching hot. The road was scorched by the sun. They walked on a smooth official road. Of course smooth by the standards of this era. But it was still dusty. The road surface was not asphalt but gravel mixed with sand. When it rained it would become muddy. As Li Yunxin walked, he used his fan to point at the road, the fields in the distance and the barren hills in the distance. "It's May now. It's time to plant beans. You know what beans are, right?" As a result, Lu Laodao blushed. "Well, I didn't used to produce." And Li Yunxin said, "There are 3 kinds of beans around the city of Wei: sesame beans, white beans and soybeans. Sesame beans were hard to boil and were mainly used to produce oil. White beans are not meant to be eaten but to be made into dyes. Soybeans, on the other hand, are common, but farmers grow the least of them." After saying this, Lu Laodao was stunned. "Brother Exen, why do you care about this?" Li Yunxin smiled slightly. "It's not that I have nothing to do. It's very useful. Look behind you and see if there are people following you." Lu Laodao turned his head and glanced at them. 2 people. They are dressed normally. Hey, I also sent people to follow them in the past. But these 2, they are openly staring at us without any hesitation. It's understandable that they are bold." Li Yunxin shook his head. "These people seem to be in the realm of conception or even the realm of emptiness. I think they are serious cultivators. That Yunzi is quite powerful, he can mobilize so many people in private. As for the realm of conception and emptiness in the secular world, they are powerful figures in a city or a place. At this time, asking them to work and disguise themselves as spies, they can't suppress their pride. Low-level cultivators are more like humans. This is human nature. But speaking of the bean seeds, old Lu, do you know what it means?" He often changed the topic abruptly. In the past, Lu Laodao couldn't get used to it. But now he was used to it. He put the 2 people behind him and naturally continued, "Well, food is the most important thing for people. These are just non-staple food?" Li Yunxin smiled while walking. "You see, I was right. Your standard of living in the city of Wei is really middle class. You have a business, you own real estate, you eat white rice for 2 meals a day and sometimes you eat meat and drink wine. Your life. Even the rich landlords in some remote places can't compare with you. But the city of Wei is a prosperous place. Alas. When you were in Nanshan you should know what your girl eats, right?" Lu Laodao blushed but didn't deny it. "Brother Exen, now that you mention it, it's true. She eats a lot of sweet potatoes. Fortunately, you have sweet potatoes here which have a high yield." Li Yunxin sighed. "Even so, many people still can't have enough to eat. Look at the continuous fields outside the city. None of them belong to those farmers. What really belongs to them is just some corner of the barren land. They rely on those fields to dig for food. Then they also plant grains and beans on those fields for several big families in the city. Look to the west, a field. In a few days bean sprouts will be planted. Hemp beans are extracted, and the oil dregs and bean cakes are the reward for those tenant farmers. The white beans are sent to the farms near the capital to improve their color. The Daqing state is still white. These things are the staple food you mentioned. The staple food we usually eat is the best non-staple food for those tenant farmers." Lu Laodao was stunned. These people, are they really like this? You think they are bitter? And this is good in the city of Wei, near the city of Wei, the first city of the Qin kingdom. You can't think of the more remote places, but I can. Unknowingly, Li Yunxin had walked a long way with him, and the city of Wei behind them had almost turned into a green shadow. But it's not your fault. Even in my time, well, in other places, if you tell someone that there are officials with a monthly income of 2,000 coins, which is equivalent to 1 tael of silver, A lot of ignorant people will jump out and ridicule you for being ignorant. How can someone have such a low income? They don't know that the city and region they live in doesn't represent the whole world. Li Yunxin became talkative and talked non-stop. However, Lu Daoist was dumbfounded. First, he didn't know why Brother Xian cared about these things. He didn't look like someone who cared about the country and the people. Then he sighed. Brother Xian really knew how to understand these things and in such detail. He was like an immortal, but he didn't care about his identity. When Li Yunxin paused and turned his head to glance behind, Lu Laodao finally had time to ask, I didn't know what Brother Xian said before. It's a pity that someone like you, Brother Xian, knows these things better than me. But what are you going to do? Brother Xian went to the mansion before. Did you plan to ask for some benefits for the people? You think too much. I can't control them. Since ancient times, reform has never ended well. I don't want to get involved in this. Besides, I'm not talking about the suffering of the people. I just want you to understand the importance of the bean seeds. Li Yunxin stopped. They had turned into a fork road, and now they couldn't see the tall city wall of the city of Wei. There was a vague outline of a village in the west, but the houses were low and far from beautiful. That was because behind the village was the wilderness mountain. During the fight between Ling Kongzi and Bai Yunxin, the wilderness mountain was completely burned down. Although the grass sprouted on the mountain again, it would take decades for the trees to grow again. And without the trees, the birds and beasts in the mountain were almost all killed or killed. About 10 years later, this mountain would be a barren mountain. At the foot of the mountain beside the village there was a large field. There were some unknown crops in the field, but they were not as vast and plentiful as the fertile land near the city of Wei. Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao stopped on the ridge of the field. There was a very shallow canal under their feet. The canal was mostly filled with mud and there were only a few muddy puddles. The grass beside the canal was also listless and its leaves drooped. Li Yunxin waved his folding fan in the distance and gathered up the fields. These fields are now filled with yellow wormwood. Look, it's already withered. After a few days we will burn these yellow wormwood and then we will start to plow the fields. After 3 or 4 days of plowing, guess what we will do? Lu Laodao said, sow bean seeds. Yes. Sow bean seeds. Li Yunxin sighed, but we still have to wait for the right time. If there is a heavy rain and the land is soaked, it means that it will be a good year. Especially this year, the forest was burned. They can't pick wild vegetables or hunt wild animals. They can't cut firewood to sell in the city of Wei. If they don't want to starve to death, they can only rely on bean seeds this time. You also saw the irrigation canal. They are all like this. This is the best that the village can do. The government also wants to develop irrigation, but where? In the fields of the rich families outside the city of Wei. Tell me one thing, isn't it funny? Li Yunxin squinted at the small village in the distance. The city of Wei is next to the Wei River and there is a Dongting beside the Wei River. These fields are only a dozen miles away from the Wei River, but they lack water. Because the fields on the other side of the canal are the fields of the rich families. They open up the source of water for irrigation so that they can receive a little water from the upstream. In fact, is the Wei River short of water? Not at all. Why doesn't it get more water? The aristocratic families say that they are afraid that the water will soak the seedlings. In fact, these people are full of their own fields. Who has the mood to take care of their fields and covet those oil-dregs bean cakes? When Lu Laodao heard his words, he had the same feeling that Brother Xian knew this. At this time this feeling became stronger, but at the same time, another kind of emotion arose spontaneously. These people really have a hard life. Seeing him staring at himself, Li Yunxin spread out his hands and shook his head slightly. You are surprised that I know so much. It's right to be surprised. There are only a few scholars in the city of Wei who know so much and want to know so much. But for me, I used to read a lot and see a lot. So we can't count on the irrigation canals of these farmers. We can't count on them in previous years. The harvest won't be good, but there are mountains. We rely on the mountains to eat. Wild vegetables and game can always fill the stomach. And this Qing kingdom is inland. Logically speaking, such a large piece of land, so large, in a place like the Qing kingdom it should be quite dry. But relying on the crisscrossing inland water system, and Li Yunxin pointed to himself. Like me, the monsters and demons who call themselves the Dragon King of all places managed to survive. There are even a few lands of fish and rice. So old Lu. In such a place with bad weather and infrequent rainfall, what do you think the fate of those farmers and tens of thousands of people can only be counted on? Lu Laodao finally understood what Li Yunqing wanted to say. A sense of solemn admiration arose spontaneously. He took a deep breath. The Dragon King can reign. Li Yunqing was silent for a while and smiled. He looked in the direction of Wei River. Yes. Count on me, the Wei River Dragon King. Especially these days. So this is why there are more than a dozen Dragon King temples near the city of Wei. Because this is inland, it is always relatively dry. People rely on the sky and the rain to eat. If not the Dragon King, who should they worship? And during this month, I didn't dare to show up. The Lord Dongting can't get out of Dongting. So did you realize? Now it is the end of spring and the beginning of summer, but it hasn't rained at all. This is the normal inland climate where there are no monsters or demons. So when the yellow wormwood is burned, and the farmers are waiting for bean seeds. Lu Laodao clapped his hands and widened his eyes. Everyone has to think of the Dragon King. That's not a normal thought. Li Yunqing smiled. Not just this time. Bean seeds need rain, but don't they need it at other times? So, the Dragon King is actually a very promising profession. But I still don't know how many places I can nourish when I summon clouds and rain. Lu Laodao rubbed his hands happily and sighed. It's a good thing after all. I say, Brother X, in your realm. How come it has improved by leaps and bounds these days? Realm is one thing, but actual combat is another. Li Yunqing turned around and saw a cultivator standing in the forest in the distance. He pointed the folding fan in his hand impolitely. For example, those two idiots over there. Since we are here to spy on them, we should do it thoroughly. Now they are standing behind the tree. They feel that it's disgraceful to curl up and hide somewhere. But if they stand on the road carelessly, we will find them. They are wavering between a whore and a monument. I feel very distressed when I see them. And our dragon cult takes pleasure in helping others as the foundation of our cult. So we should help them if we can. Hearing this, Lu Laodao was about to volunteer when he suddenly lost sight of Li Yunqing. In the next moment he suddenly appeared in the forest beside the two cultivators. According to the perception of ordinary people, the place where they stood just now was 100 steps away from the small forest, which was considered very far. But cultivators had sharp ears and eyes, so they could still see clearly at such a distance. Lu Laodao originally planned to follow them, but when he saw the situation in the forest, he was immediately stunned. He saw that Li Yunqing had revealed his fiend god avatar the moment he appeared. His sideburns were as white as snow, and his antlers were as red as blood. He grabbed a cultivator who was only half his height in his hand. With just one bite, his head was bitten off. He then opened his mouth and took another bite, and half of his body would be gone. Chapter 168. The toughness of an emptiness realm cultivator's body was far beyond the imagination of mortals. However, in the mouth of the fiend god, such a body was like a soft, pale man. The other cultivator was a Daoist priest from the neighboring Ping city. His Taoist name was Chongpingzi. He used to study under Yunzi, so he was summoned here because of the relationship between master and disciple. He used to learn Taoism in the heavenly cave, then went down the mountain to train in the secular world. He followed his master's orders and didn't provoke those scary big demons. He only killed small demons and was worshipped by the people in the city. Who would have thought that the fellow Daoist beside him would be taken away so easily? Cultivators did think that they might die. The path of cultivation was not smooth. There were all kinds of tribulations waiting for them. However, they thought that they might die due to bad luck, die of chi deviation, die of old age as a mortal, or die a heroic death after a fierce battle with a big demon. They didn't think that they would die like this. They didn't even have time to make a Taoist spell or pick up a talisman before they were eaten. At this moment Chongpingzi was dumbstruck. In his field of vision, there was only the fiend god's body, which was like an iron tower that covered the entire sky and covered the earth. All he could see were dark green iron scales splashing bright red blood, mutilated limbs, torn muscles and broken bones dyed red with blood. He heard the remaining half of his companion's body fall to the ground like a pile of mud. In an instant he was awakened from his dazed state. his eyes widened and he screamed suddenly. He took out a handful of talismans from his sleeve and threw them out in a daze. He only had time to look at the fiend god's horns and hair before he ran away while shouting. An emptiness realm cultivator had some tricks up his sleeve if he wanted to escape. Li Yunxin saw a cloud of dust on the official road. The Daoist priest appeared 100 steps away. However, he didn't chase. He just raised his hand and stretched out his index finger. The air at the tip of his finger suddenly became distorted, and then a bright white light suddenly appeared. With a hissing sound, a twisted and scorching trail was instantly drawn in the air, and it hit the Daoist priest in the middle of the smoke 100 steps away. A miserable cry came from afar. The figure in the distance paused for a moment but did not fall. Blood splattered all over the ground, but he ran even faster. Then Li Yunxin put down his hand and turned to look at Lu Laodao. The massacre ended within 2 breaths of time, and there were no signs of human habitation nearby. As soon as Chong Pingzi's shouts disappeared, the cicadas in the forest began to chirp again, creating the background sound of summer. Lu Laodao stood in the sun 100 paces away, staring without moving or saying a word. The tall demon god suddenly opened his mouth and spat on the ground. With a splat, half a body and a head were spat out. He rolled on the grass and into a bush, scaring away a small animal that was hiding inside. Then a cloud of mist rose around him, and his tall body quickly shrunk until he returned to the size of a normal person. The cloud of mist quickly gathered and turned into a white robe. Li Yunxin frowned and wiped his mouth with his hand, then spat on the ground a few times. Then he touched the white fan and took out a small jar of wine. He pulled out the stopper, raised his head and took a big gulp, then spat it out. After a few times he sighed, "What's so good about it?" Seeing that he had returned to his human form, Lu Laodao slowly walked over. Standing beside him, he looked at the broken body on the ground, the dark red blood on the ground, and then at Li Yunxin. Then he coughed. "This is probably, the cooking method is not right. The beef and mutton are not delicious to eat like this." Li Yunxin turned to look at him. "Don't waste your time. I am a demon, but I didn't say that demons like to eat human and flesh. The body is just a vessel here." He pointed to his head. "The things here are the most real. Then, to let them know who I am." Li Yunxin looked at the official road. "That old guy is too timid and thinks too much. If he still doesn't make a move after I have arranged everything, it will be very embarrassing." After saying that, he saw that Lu Laodao was still staring at him, so he laughed. "Are you afraid of me? I won't eat you." "It's not that I'm afraid." The expression on Lu Laodao's face was very complicated. "I heard what Brother Exen said before, so I didn't think too much about it. Now that I saw you with my own eyes. Get used to it." "I'm getting used to it. But you have to be careful these days," Li Yunxin said as he walked towards the direction of the city of Wei. When passing by the corpse in the forest, Lu Laodao couldn't help but look at it a few more times, but he didn't say anything. That Yunzi guessed whether I was Dragon Son hatred or not, but it was just a guess. Now that I showed my Dharmakaya, ate one and scared the other away, that Taoist should know that I am Dragon Son. Li Yunxin said as he walked. He will have a lot of ideas, but he will make up his mind in the end. I don't know much about the things in Daotong, but I know that some of my family members were killed by some demons. Whether it is for benefits or reputation, I have to do something. So now, it is our declaration of war against him." Lu Laodao followed behind him and didn't say anything. It seemed that he needed some time to digest what he had just seen. Li Yunxin didn't explain more about what had just happened. He believed that the old man would quickly make him adapt to the fact that he was now on the side of demons and fighting against the righteousness of the world. This kind of thing always sounded cool, but not many people could really be a villain to their heart's content. Yes, unconsciously. How did I become an evil villain? This thought flashed in Li Yunxin's mind and he couldn't help laughing. Lu Laodao didn't know what he was thinking, but he had his own ideas. However, after walking a dozen steps, he caught up to Li Yunxin from a distance of a few steps. After walking for a while, he said absent-mindedly, "Ordinary people don't have any rules when they fight. Scratching, and biting when provoked were all human nature. But the teeth aren't that sharp, they can't bite. Biting and eating are two different things." "Yes, two different things," Li Yunxin said. Lu Laodao let out a sigh of relief in his heart. He didn't know what he was happy about. Then he began to talk about business as if he had forgotten all his worries. But there is still one thing I don't understand. Brother Exen, now that you've entered the city, you want Yunzi to think you're hatred. But hatred and Qi-Wen are both Dragon's son. Brother Exen calls himself Qi-Wen, but you want him to think you're hatred. Why? Because hatred has a bad reputation. Li Yunxin turned around and smiled at him. A quarter of an hour ago, this person had just bitten off a cultivator's head. Yazi's territory, I also heard it from others. It's said that it's in the Yi Kingdom and the Li Kingdom. But you've heard of him, right? What do people say about him? Hatred must be avenged, right? They also say he's cruel and impatient. A few days ago when I was wandering in the city, I really saw a woman with a child. The child was crying and the woman said long air would take him away if he cried again. Although the child ignored her and didn't do anything, it was obvious. Long air and hatred don't have a good reputation. But Qi-Wen, what's the reputation of the Dragon King temple you built before? Lu Laodao thought for a while. Well, to be honest, everyone in the city of Wei knows Qi-Wen. The dragon has 9 sons, everyone knows it. But few people know that our Wei River Dragon King is Qi-Wen. According to the old people, and I used to think so, our Wei River Dragon King is really a divine dragon. It's said that a long time ago the divine dragon did show his divinity here. But let's talk about Qi-Wen. There's nothing to be afraid of. In the past, the 9th young master ate people, but the number of people he ate in a year, sigh. In this city of Wei, there were at least 100 people who died of illness, violence, old age, starvation and cold in a year. Those he harmed, no one really paid attention to. Li Yunxin patted his folding fan. That's it. Qi-Wen has a good reputation. A few days ago I told you about people's power of faith, strong faith and weak faith. But there's one thing you haven't thought about. If you do a favor to someone, that person may not be grateful to you. That he may be greedy. But if you hurt someone, just once he will remember it. It's hard to make people worship and respect you. But it's too easy to make people fear you. So if that's the case, why do monsters show their supernatural power to do good? You know, if you help someone this time and don't do it next time, that person may scold you as a god. But if he scolds you, you immediately go to his house at night and eat his son. I guarantee that his whole family will remember you for the rest of their lives, and will fear and hate you intensely. What a strong faith it is. Lu Laodao exclaimed, didn't they say, evil people will be eliminated by Dao Tong? That's the first reason. Li Yunxin sighed slightly. I only knew about this a few days ago. Fortunately, I didn't go the wrong way. You know, there are yin and yang in the world, and yin and yang are important in cultivation. It's the same principle with the power of faith. Good and evil will give people strength, but just like yin and yang, they will restrain each other. It's not easy to have good thoughts, but it's easy to have evil thoughts. But the power of faith obtained by being feared and hated by people will also make people violent and impulsive. This is not a good thing. I was confused before. A big demon like the 9th young master could run amok in Wei River and city of Wei, and he also needed to eat the power of faith. But why was he so cautious? You see, he ate Li Yaoxi's concubine. She was the family of a governor. If people knew about this, it would cause a big uproar. But he only ate at night and didn't show up much. Then he ate others. He ate in the temple in the wilderness outside the city. Think about the big demon who wore the skin of young Master Qin. He ate the souls of domestic animals and beasts, but he didn't eat people easily. I originally thought it was a bit far-fetched to explain these things with reasons like, love your nest, and don't eat the grass near your nest. But now I know, even if they think that good thoughts are something they don't want the faith of evil thoughts. Lu Laodao's attention was attracted by this novel explanation. He frowned and thought for a while and felt that it made sense. For a moment he felt that he knew the secret of the cultivation world and his heart was itching. He asked hurriedly, why don't they want the evil thoughts? That hatred, in this case, isn't it evil thoughts? Li Yunxin shook his head slightly. I don't know about that. My friend in the city also doesn't know about the effects of evil thoughts. It's just that he has been a Yin master for a longer time than me and he has more information channels, so he knows a little bit. Lord Dongting should know. Otherwise, why would he turn into Priest Li to eat people? But he won't tell me. But no matter what, I know that the power of faith brought by good thoughts and evil thoughts, to a certain extent, they are mutually exclusive. Li Yunxin sighed softly. If Yunzi is smart enough, he will make a fuss about this. If he is not smart enough, then he is dead. Yunzi frowned slightly, looking at Chong Pingzi, who was sitting paralyzed on the ground. This was an emptiness realm Daoist, more than 130 years old this year. He was a disciple of the emptiness realm in his early years, but his aptitude was ordinary. However, Yunzi used to be a secular person and later became a cultivator. Therefore, he knew that aptitude was not the only standard to judge whether a cultivator was worth befriending. Therefore, with the tactful attitude of a secular person, he treated almost everyone well, naturally according to the standards of the cultivators. Therefore, when Chong Pingzi was sent to another sect after he was over 100 years old and was stuck at the early Void Realm, this Void Realm Daoist with ordinary aptitude still had a good impression of Yu Yunzi and still respected him as his master. This time, the more than 30 cultivators that Yunzi secretly gathered were probably in the same situation. Some were once his disciples and had feelings for him. Some had received a favor from him and owed him a favor, and had told him something along the lines of, "I will repay you in the future." For cultivators, the phrase, "I will repay you in the future," was not something that people in the secular world would say casually. No one liked to owe others a favor because it could lead to a catastrophe. Because of this, Dao Tong and Kenzo did not advocate close master and disciple relationships, and only needed to follow the rules. But Yunzi cleverly used this set of rules that had been passed down for thousands of years, and won the favor of many people. Now this Chong Pingzi, who came because of their past relationship, sat paralyzed on the ground, muttering the same words over and over again. Catastrophe, catastrophe, it is a catastrophe after all. That terrible demon hit his ocean of chi and mountain of snow with a tyrannical spiritual power while he was escaping. There was a huge gap between their realms. Chong Pingzi endured the terrible pain of losing his power and returned to the station to explain the details. Now his whole body was slowly losing consciousness. He felt that this was a catastrophe. If he did not have that friendship, he would not have come to help his former master. And he would not have ended up like this. Chapter 169. Yunzi sighed. He was not sighing at the fact that his former disciple's cultivation was destroyed, nor was he sighing at the fact that his former disciple was eaten so casually. He was sighing at their stupidity. However, there was nothing to sigh about. He knew that the stupidity of these cultivators was the result of the inheritance of Dao Tong and Kenzo. It was not the will of one person or a few people, but the result of thousands of years of choices. He was a genius who started cultivating at the age of 40. Now he was 132 years old, and it took him 86 years to reach the realm of enlightened master. The one sitting on the ground was 113 years old, and he had been cultivating for 113 years. He was a Daoist from a cave and his parents were both cultivators. However, due to his lack of talent, he only reached the realm of emptiness after 113 years. There were many Daoists like him and the swordsmen were even more demanding. This was under the condition that they had almost no distractions and were wholeheartedly cultivating. Yunzi knew that he was a smart person, but he also knew that if everyone in Daotong was as smart as him, they would have fallen apart a long time ago. A group of smart people with great power and ambition, smart people who were no different from those in the secular world. How could there still be Daotong and Kenzo? They would have plotted against each other and killed each other. However, he still sighed at their stupidity. Their power, which was not considered strong in his eyes, made them lose the instinct to seek benefits and avoid harm that everyone in the secular world had. He sighed again and looked at Chong Pingzi without sorrow or joy. "Why didn't you hide well?" The Daoist on the ground looked at him with numb eyes. His lips and fingers were trembling, but now they were no longer trembling. Only his eyes occasionally moved, emitting the light of despair. That is hatred. Hatred with scales and horns. Yunzi looked at him. His tone was not angry, but it did not sound like he was comforting either. He used to be a great demon in the realm of mysterious. He only needed one finger to kill me. Although he is heavily injured, he is still hatred. Chong Pingzi could no longer speak. Li Yunxin's spiritual power pierced through his snow mountain, but it didn't completely destroy it. Therefore he was able to live for another hour, an extremely painful and unimaginable hour. Now that the cultivator had reached the end of his life, the pain he felt was almost equal to the total amount of torture he had suffered in the previous hour. He stared at Yunzi, hoping that he could free him. However, his master did not seem to intend to do so. Only then did Chong Pingzi realize this was his punishment. But he did not even have the strength to express regret or anger. This won't do. Zai. Yunzi sighed again. He looked at Chong Pingzi as if he was looking at a disappointing child. You guys are typical cultivators. Born in the blessed enclave, one's aptitude was better than most people in the secular world. From the moment he was born, he had started cultivating, ignoring the affairs of the world. Perhaps you still don't know that in this world, there are people who would kill for a mouthful of food. That's a good thing. In this way, your desires are not strong and you are wholeheartedly focused on cultivation. Even if he were to walk in the secular world in the future, he would still be high and mighty. Your world is already very difficult to shake. When Yunzi said this, Chong Pingzi's pupils began to slacken. He blinked as if he was relieved he could finally get rid of this terrible pain. But his master raised his hand, and a stream of spiritual energy was injected into his body through the air. His temporary vitality was rejuvenated, and at the same time it was followed by a tsunami-like pain. A series of the most vicious curses quickly appeared in Chong Pingzi's heart. But he was not good at it and he did not even know how to curse. Yunzi did not care about his pain. It seemed that he just did not want to lose an audience. Green smoke rose from the incense burner in the room, and the fierce sunlight penetrated the wool carpet within one step of the door. Outside the window, the trees swayed gently and rustled. The Daoist in the true realm lowered his eyes. That's why I said this won't do. He sighed. They need smart people like me. They need smart people like me to do some evil things. They need smart people like me who have the strength, brains, and desire to face the coming catastrophe. That's why I have to become the leader of a sect. And that sect should be the sharp knife. Don't go through the catastrophe and don't abandon any desire. Just pursue the ultimate power. He was silent and thought for a while, and then he raised his hand again. A more vigorous spiritual energy was injected into Chong Pingzi's body. Say it. Because of this spiritual energy, the dying Daoist priest was finally able to speak despite the extreme pain he was in. He should have said a series of curses, but as Yunzi said, the idea he had formed in more than 100 years made him say something else. If we don't go through the catastrophe, how can we improve our cultivation? How can we forget? We don't need to do that. Yunzi looked at him calmly. Why do we have to go through the catastrophe? Or they are afraid that we will lose our nature. Or they are afraid that we will not be able to improve. But as far as I know, there is a sect that cultivates Daoist magic arts and swordsmanship at the same time, and they don't go through the catastrophe. They go out into the world and their strength is so strong that even I am shocked. You don't know about this. I don't know whether the two saints know, but I do. In them I see what people who possess great strength but don't abandon their emotions and desires are like. They are a group of lunatics. But we are a group of old people. Yunzi closed his eyes. Lunatics can change and destroy the world, but old people can't stop them. I am willing to become a lunatic, and many people in Daotong and Kenza will become lunatics. We will be the first group of martyrs. But, the Taishang. The emptiness boundary Taoist's life force began to weaken again. Even Yunzi couldn't prolong his life for much longer. The Taishang forgets emotions? Yunzi laughed coldly. Let's first figure out why the two saints have been in the Taishang forgets emotions realm for 1,000 years, but still haven't ascended. The light in Chong Pingzi's eyes finally died out. Yunzi gazed at his corpse and shook his head in pity. You are also a martyr. It was a moonless night. But the wind was strong. The flowers of the acacia and moonlight outside the house were blown off the trees, covering half of the courtyard. The fragrance of the flowers mixed with the smell of the soil, but it smelled surprisingly good. Li Yunxin sat on a rattan chair under the porch, half reclining. He was using a thin wolf hairbrush to draw on a white paper fan. He was painting a landscape half painted and half painted, but he was only half finished. Strictly speaking, this painting wasn't very good. The composition and blank space were both problematic. Apart from the experienced brushwork, there was nothing special about it. But he seemed to be doing this just to get rid of the boredom. After a few strokes he would stop and think about it. At the moment he was temporarily staying in one of the properties of the Yu residence. There was a courtyard with 3 entrances about a quarter of an hour away from Taoshi Road. The person who took care of him and Lu Laodao was a middle-aged scholar who called himself Mr. Li. He was extremely ugly. The first impression that left on Li Yunxin was that he had a strange appearance. But he was unexpectedly polite to Lu Laodao. His words were occasionally probing, as if he didn't believe that this Lu Gongzan was the Lu Gongzan that day in the Yu residence. He pulled Lu Laodao to the front yard to drink and make merry, but he never looked at Li Yunxin. No matter what, he was a smart person and could see through some inside information. He sat under the porch enjoying the wind. After a while he seemed to be tired. He put the brush on the brush holder, blew the ink on the fan and closed it. But when he was about to close his eyes, he found that there was a dot of light on the crown of the acacia tree in the courtyard. He opened his eyes and looked around lazily. He found that there was a bright moon on the crown of the tree. It was indeed a bright moon, a golden, round, flat moon like in comic books. There were a few clouds curling around it. The crescent moon emitted a gentle light that illuminated the entire courtyard. The sound of the wind stopped and the voices in the front yard disappeared. Then a small human figure appeared in the moon. It grew bigger and bigger as if it was walking over from afar. In a few steps it walked out of the moon. It lifted its feet and stepped on the white clouds beside the moon, walking step by step into the courtyard. But this person was not a moon fairy but a moon immortal. He looked to be in his 40s and wore an unusually soft, unwrinkled Daoist robe. 5 strands of hair were as black as ink, but his face was fair and clear. He landed in the courtyard and stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at Li Yunxin and said, "I heard that the Lord Tongtian is the most unyielding and hot-tempered, and that he has a decisive and murderous temperament. Now he has fallen to living with a secular person?" Li Yunxin stared at him seriously for a while, then closed his eyes. "None of your business." The newcomer was not angry. He stood with his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "It seems that is not entirely true. Now that I have exposed your identity, you are not anxious or impatient." Li Yunxin still ignored him. This time Yunzi smiled slightly. "It is said that dragons like to say shocking things and the ancients were not deceiving me. It is just that the Lord Tongtian hibernating here is not a long-term plan, right?" After saying this, he gently waved his hand. Then 2 children in colorful clothes walked down from the bright moon on the acacia tree. They worked together to carry a soft chair out and placed it for Yunzi to sit on. The Lord Tongtian used a good strategy. Yunzi said calmly, "I previously thought that demons might be scheming people, but wild and unruly divine beasts like the Lord Tongtian are disdainful. But recently I have observed the Lord Tongtian's plans, and feel that he is meticulous and calm. If it was not for me, I am afraid that others would have fallen into the Lord Tongtian's trap." These words seemed to have finally aroused Li Yunxin's interest. He half opened his eyes, revealing a strange evil smile. A row of fine and sharp teeth flashed under the bright moonlight. "Oh, a trifling true state cultivator was actually able to see through my plan? Hey, tell me about it." He then opened his eyes completely. A pair of demonic golden eyes stared at Yunzi. "If you are wrong, I will eat you alive." Yunzi laughed loudly. "The Lord Tongtian has fallen into such a situation, but his prestige has not diminished. He is really a great demon. But I already know that when the Lord Tongtian fought with the Ghost Emperor that day, both his Dharmakaya and true body were seriously injured, and almost both his body and soul were destroyed. It is also sad to think about it. 2 dragons' son, one died and the other was injured in just a few days." At this point, Yunzi changed the topic. "Lord Tongtian, do you know how I saw through your identity?" "Humph. There is no need for me to hide." Yunzi smiled and said to himself, "It is said that when the old man in Dongting saw the Lord Tongtian for the first time, his personal ability was similar to that of Tsong Yunzi of the Danding school of Xianxia sect. But when he saw you a few days ago, your personal ability had already entered the state of perfection. The speed of your improvement is really amazing. However, I know that the Lord Tongtian is a born monster in the mysterious state. When his Dharmakaya and true body were injured, his personal ability was also damaged. It is naturally very fast to recover. But such a speed is still too slow." Li Yunxin stopped talking and stared at him fiercely with a pair of golden eyes. Yunzi got excited. He stood up from the bed and paced for 2 steps. Because the Lord Tongtian wants to recultivate. This is a good opportunity. His tone gradually became cold and he looked at Li Yunxin with bright eyes. The Lord Tongtian used to be notorious in the Yi Kingdom and the Li Kingdom. He cultivated the way of bad wish. Although it is the easiest way to improve, there are many hidden dangers. Before that, your personal ability was almost destroyed, and you also knew that the Daotong Kenzo would definitely go to the Tongtian swamp to hunt the Ghost Emperor. You certainly couldn't feel at ease. So you escaped to the Wei River. Then you knew what happened here, and you also knew that I, the Lord Dongting and the Golden Rock Girl suspected each other. So you created the dragon cult. Then you set up a trap in the city and killed the Qingliangji. So, we were all on guard against each other and thought that the dragon cult was the work of the other party. The Lord Tongtian not only hid his identity, but also obtained the power of wish. Now he obtained the good wish, no wonder your progress is slower. What I said now, is it the truth? Li Yunxin slowly sat up straight from the rattan chair, no longer pretending to be fierce. He stared at Yunzi for a while and sneered, "You are smarter than I thought. Do you know where the Lord Tongtian made the first mistake?" Yunzi said with a smile. "The first time you went to Mount Jun to meet the Lord Dongting, when you boarded the boat, the shrimp soldier saw it clearly. You are actually afraid of water. Then that night when you fought with Tsong Yunzi, you didn't cross the river unless you found a boat." Yunzi threw his head back and laughed. The secret historical records of the Daotong say that although the Lord Tongtian is the dragon's son, his real body is the body of a leopard. As a dragon's, he does not like water. It is actually true. After Yunzi said this, he saw Li Yunxin on the rattan chair was startled. He clapped his hands. "Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I also know that the Lord Tongtian entered the city and went to the Yu mansion. He patiently contacted the secular people because he wanted to borrow their power. He borrowed the power of the secular people to do the good deeds of building bridges and paving roads. He thought that this would not attract my attention. But he did not know that the Yu family felt that you are my people, so they turned around and asked me." After saying this, he paused and stared at Li Yunxin. "And today the Lord Tongtian left the city. I am afraid it is not to avoid my eyes and ears. It is to bean seeds." He sneered and sighed. "Lord of Tongun, do you think I'm a cultivator who doesn't know the ways of the world? But he does not know that I was a state farmer before I became a Daoist. Other people may not know about bean seeds, but I do. At this season, the farmers are looking forward to rain. When the Lord Tongtian, your dragon cult, grows in the city, then you will recruit more believers and make a vow to you asking for rain. At that time, when you use your supernatural power again and attract a storm, the power of wish will increase crazily. It is a good plan, but I have seen through it." Yunzi walked 2 steps, returned to the couch and sat down. He looked at Li Yunxin, whose face was as dark as water. "What other plans does the Lord Tongtian have?" Chapter 170. From the moment Yunzi walked out of the moon to the moment he asked this question, only a quarter of an hour had passed. However, he seemed to have hidden those words in his heart for a long time. Today he could finally pour them out freely. Li Yunxin only stared at him, his eyes fierce and gloomy. After a quarter of an hour of silence, the pupils of the golden eyes suddenly shrank into a thin line. "Do you know what happened to the last person who thought he was smart in front of me?" Yunzi looked at him with a tolerant gaze. "I want to hear about Lord Tongtian's means. It's certainly not something we can imagine." "The last person was a stinky Daoist called Qingliangzi." Li Yunxin looked at him and said slowly, "He thought I was a servant, so he blocked the road and wanted to kill me. That idiot." He squinted his eyes, opened his mouth and sighed in a low and happy voice. "I first asked him to tell me everything he knew, just like you did today. Then when he thought he had figured out my plan, I killed him. First I smashed his body into pieces and then smashed his soul into nothingness. That idiot didn't know why he died. Don't you think it's satisfying?" Yunzi smiled and shook his head, pointing in the air. Then a few acacia flowers fell from the trees and floated in the air, emitting a soft light, like beautiful little lamps. "That Qingliangzi was my good friend. Alas, what a pity." Yunzi smiled and sighed. "He was a crazy person, but crazy in an interesting way. I used to know that there was a problem in Daotong and Kenzo, but I didn't know where it was. But he told me some things and pointed out the way for me. It's not an exaggeration to say that he was a master of one word. Lord Tongnan, you killed my good friend, a master of one word. What should I do to you? Li Yunqing raised his head slightly. An extremely faint but scorching mist rose from his nostrils, ears and mouth. He said in a low voice, but his voice already contained a bit of a wild beast's hoarseness and violence. What does a mere true realm little person want to do to me? Yunzi sensed the danger, but he didn't care. His smile became more tolerant and gentle. He heaved a long sigh of relief and raised a finger, pointing at the bright moon on the crown of the acacia tree. Lord Tongtian, do you know that this thing is called the treasure mirror of mysterious light? It was a magical weapon that I had refined for more than 60 years. It's best at seeing through a cultivator's realm. I value my life and I don't like to do things that I'm not prepared for. Therefore he cherished this magical treasure very much. Therefore he knew that Lord Tongtian was only at the peak of the transcendent state. The Lord Tongtian wants to practice the path of goodwill. As dragons, you are experienced and knowledgeable, and you should know that demons are the same as us human cultivators. When they reach the profound state and break through to the Taishang forgetting realm, they have to go through the tribulation. To go through the tribulation they have to abandon their emotions and desires. That's why Lord Tongtian wants to practice the path of goodwill again. As far as I know, when the path of bad will reaches the peak of the profound state, it's really full of inner demons. They don't need to go through the tribulation, but they have to destroy their own cultivation. But, without the heart of Dao, how can they understand the Taishang forgetting realm? Daotong has the heart of Dao and Kenzo has the heart of swordsmanship. Demons and Yin spirits. Isn't the reason why Lord Tongtian stopped at the peak of the transcendent state to find this heart? Yunzi spread his hands. Is Lord Tongtian really willing to break through the peak of the transcendent state and enter the true state, and lose this search? What should I call it? As far as I know, except for the Shinryu, no demon can find something like the heart of Dao or the heart of swordsmanship. Is Lord Tongtian willing to give up this opportunity? Is he waiting for the next realm to fall to the intent realm, and then recultivate and find that little bit of light again? Heh. At that time, Lord Tongtian might not meet someone as easygoing as I am. Li Yunqing fell silent and frowned, thinking for a long time. Yu Yunzi had inadvertently mentioned something that confirmed one of his thoughts. There is no free lunch in this world. Daotong and Kenzo cultivators have to go through the tribulation. They have to find the heart of Dao and the heart of swordsmanship at the peak of the transcendent state, and then break through to the true state. Although it's extremely unlikely, even if there's a glimmer of hope, people are not willing to give up the Taishang forgetting realm. Demons, on the other hand, can absorb the power of will, and their cultivation can skyrocket. But this debt has to be paid, at the peak of the profound state when they break through to the Taishang forgetting realm. Most demons can't pay it back. He never thought so far ahead. Until today he was forced. When no one forced him he was gentle and indifferent, at least it seemed. But if someone thought he was easy to bully and poked him for fun, they would have to face terrible and crazy revenge. But at this point he really didn't think about the Taishang forgetting realm. But he also didn't want to end up as a great demon at the peak of the profound state. There was still someone above him and it was very uncomfortable. But Daotong looked for the heart of Dao and Kenzo looked for the heart of swordsmanship, all to not lose the heart of Dao when they abandoned their desires. Although he didn't want to admit it, it was a fact. Desire was the source of all living beings in this world. Desire. Li Yunqing had it. But the so-called emotions they wanted to abandon. Li Yunqing raised his head. The ferocious expression from before slowly faded away. He even yawned. A cloud of mist gushed out from his mouth, curled up and dissipated in the air. Easy to talk to? What do you mean? His silence made Yunzi believe in his own judgment. The Daoist priest smiled and stretched out his hand to push away an acacia flower that was slowly drifting in front of him. Actually, this humble Daoist would like to have a try and see what kind of experience it would be to kill a dragon's son who was once in the profound realm as a true master. But after thinking about it, I have more important things to do. Lord Tongtian is also a smart man. He should know that in this world, a great calamity is coming. Shinryu established a dynasty. Although in the eyes of my Daotong and Kenzo, it is loose. But it is still a dynasty. This is the first non-human dynasty since there were demons in this world. Many cultivators don't agree with this. They think that demons are always in a state of disunity, and that this so-called dynasty is a joke. But they don't notice one thing. In the 2000 years since the establishment of this dynasty, not a single great demon in the profound realm has been killed. But what about before? Every few decades, hundreds of years, there would be a great demon in the profound realm falling in battle. Whether you admit it or not, and those short-sighted cultivators admit it or not, the Dragon Dynasty does exist, and with just 2,000 years of Shinryu authority, it has restrained all the demons in the world. Your power is getting stronger and stronger. Li Yunxin sneered but didn't say anything. Yunzi didn't care about his attitude and instead fell into deep thought. So the current situation of the world is, in reality, Daotong and Kenzo rule the humans and the Dragon Dynasty rules the demons. In reality, this is already the tacit situation for 2,000 years. One after another, human dynasties have divided up the known world of our heavenly sphere. But just take the kingdom of Qing as an example, take the city of Wei as an example. The magistrate of the city of Wei issued a decree in the magistrate's office, and it spread throughout the entire Wei prefecture. But in this Wei prefecture, such a large piece of land, the city of Wei only occupies 1%. The land that the humans rest on is only 30 to 40%. Where are the other lands? They are occupied by demons. Demons don't build their own prefectures, but for a great demon like the Lord Dongting, if he really goes crazy, then the magistrate of the city of Wei is nothing. Fortunately, there are Daotong and Kenzo. Demons are entrenched everywhere, but they don't dare to go crazy. Therefore, the Lord Tongtian, the Dragon Dynasty, is an invisible dynasty that overlaps with the empires of the humans. This is something that not even many demons are aware of. I never listen to anyone's orders. Li Yunxin was full of malice and muttered darkly. Yunzi smiled tolerantly as if he was looking at a child, or a pitiful opponent that he had conquered. Therefore, since there is a continuously growing dragon dynasty and humans are flourishing under the protection of Daotong and Kenzo, then there is a problem. The more humans flourish, the stronger you demons that rely on the power of will to cultivate. The stronger the demons are, the weaker Daotong and Kenzo are. We are digging our own graves. Therefore, Daotong, Kenzo and demons will have a war. In fact, I am very suspicious. Is it really because we watched the Dragon Dynasty grow stronger and thus angered the celestial being so that there has been no news of the celestial being for the past 3,000 years, and the two sages dare not ascend? Yunzi looked at Li Yunxin with bright eyes, but Daotong and Kenzo are not ready yet. They are cultivators but not warriors. You are warriors. Li Yunxin looked at him lazily and sneered, Daoist. You have entered the delusion. This is your delusion. Delusion? Ah. Yunzi laughed happily. Oh. No, this is my Dao heart. I used delusion to transform my Dao heart and used delusion to enter the true realm, to kill all the demons in the world. This is my delusion and also my Dao heart. Because they are not ready, I want them to be ready. Yunzi's 5 strands of long beard moved without wind, and he looked like an immortal. So I won't kill you even if I can kill you with a finger now. I was watching before because I didn't know the inside story. Now that I have seen through your plan, I still haven't killed you because I want to use you. You think I don't know? That Lu Ling is in Lord Dongting's lair. At this time, there is also Dragon Sun hatred. Dragon Sun hatred. In Wei River he colluded with Lord Dongting, and his ferocious nature exploded, and he killed 36 cultivators of Daotong. First there was the Ghost Emperor Order and 4 high-level cultivators fell. Then Dragon Sun killed dozens of low-level cultivators. You see, they have quality and quantity. If Daotong and Kenzo fight against demons, how can they protect the world? And at that time, I was in the city of Wei. And I used to live in the secular world, and I know the situation of the city of Wei and Wei River the best. So I have to be the vanguard. Once I get them, Yunzi heaved a sigh of relief. No one can take them away from me. Those people, they don't know any tricks. I will get more until I can. He suddenly stopped and looked at Li Yunxin with a strange expression. Li Yunxin also looked at him. After a while he asked, So what do you need me to do? Undisguised joy appeared on Yunzi's face. He clapped his hands and laughed. Good, you are indeed the great demon Lord Tongun. Such courage, if not for the fact that you are not of my race, Yunzi will definitely make friends with you. I am not interested. Li Yunxin snorted coldly. Yunzi, who was in high spirits, did not care about the other person's bad attitude at all. He twirled his beard and smiled. What Lord Tongtian wants to do is to kill those 36 cultivators. Lord of Tongtian must have noticed it, right? They are among the workers, you can see them at a glance. After Lord Tongtian kills them, I will not disturb you to continue practicing the path of goodwill. Because only when Lord Tongtian enters the true state and finds the heart of Dao, can he become a strong enemy of Dao Tong and Kenzo. I need a strong enemy. That old thing Lord Dongting is trapped in the lake and can't go out more than 10 feet, so he is not a threat. But a dragon's son who used to be in the mysterious state and now has found the heart of Dao, is the most terrible enemy. Yunzi sighed comfortably. Demon, find the heart of Dao. Except for the divine dragon who was born to be tyrannical, there is no such example. Whether the war starts or not, I will get what I want. And you, Lord Tongtian, are my opportunity. So you see, you can be used by me. If you let me do this, I can stay in the city of Wei to manage my power. At the same time, I need you to always exist and become stronger so that this situation can continue. Yunzi looked at Li Yunxin seriously. Lord Tongtian, do you want to do this? Li Yunxin drooped his eyelids and sneered. What if I don't do it? Yunzi stopped smiling and said word by word, then you are courting death. The situation that Li Yunxin flew into a rage as Yunzi expected did not happen. This Lord Tongtian just looked at him gloomily. So he understood that Li Yunxin had fully understood the current situation. No matter how arrogant a demon was, he still wanted to live. He snorted, even if you don't do it, I still have other opportunities. That Lu Ling is in the hands of Lord Dongting. If I plan it, it will still be the same situation, but it will take more effort. But for you, as long as I use a talisman in my hand, another cultivator of the mysterious state will come within 5 days and you will only die. Now I am telling you this because I am in a good mood. If you make I unhappy, you will end up with your tendons pulled out and your skin peeled off. You're on your own and think about it carefully. After saying this, Yunzi flicked his sleeves, and his body suddenly turned into a golden light and went straight into the mysterious light treasure mirror. And the 2 boys in colorful clothes who were standing beside him suddenly turned into a green light and disappeared. 2 albizia flowers fell from the sky. The night wind blew again and the voices in the front yard came again. Li Yunxin slightly frowned in the dark, sitting still. But hatred was afraid of water? He really didn't know at that time. Chapter 171. Therefore, when Lu Laodao came back from the front yard, he saw Li Yunxin sitting alone in the dark corridor. Laodao knew nothing about what had happened in the courtyard, but he could tell that Li Yunxin was not happy. He didn't think that Li Yunxin was unhappy because he had left him alone. He knew that Brother Exen was not always fond of crowds, nor was he always lonely. But Mr. Li was certainly not willing to join in the fun. He dragged a rattan chair to Li Yunxin's side, turned his face sideways and burped, "What's wrong with Brother Exen?" Li Yunxin glanced at him in the dark. That Yunzi took the bait. Lu Laodao was stunned. The good wine made him feel comfortable, but it also slowed his thinking. After a while he laughed. "Oh, Brother Exen is so smart. He was here just now?" After being stunned for a while he thought again, "But Brother Exen, is there anything else?" Li Yunxin touched his folding fan and sighed. "When we were outside the city, I told you that Yunzi was a smart man. He would use good wish and bad wish to trick me. Now it seems that he is indeed a smart man. He even found some suspicious points, which saved me a lot of trouble. And he did follow the path I designed, making a fuss about good and evil. He even told me a lot of things that I didn't know before. Be reasonable, he is really a good teacher." Then, why is Brother Exen still worried? Is it because his realm is too high? Lu Laodao asked hesitantly. Because he is too smart. Not only is he a smart man, but he is also a smart man with ambition. What the hell? Li Yunxin tapped the back of his hand with his folding fan. He's a cultivator. Why is he doing farming? He even knows about bean seeds. Then, under the night breeze and the smell of alcohol, he told Lu Laodao everything that had just happened. When he finished speaking, Laodao also frowned. He pondered for a long time and asked, This way of speaking, it sounds incredible, but if you think about it carefully it makes sense. As a Daotong cultivator, he was now scheming against Daotong cultivators and harming his fellow disciples. Harming innocent fellow disciples was a great sin. If he wanted to set up a trap, to use such a method to set up a trap, it would be too unflattering. If you put it that way, it does sound like it's true. Li Yunxin sighed softly. You can just make up an excuse to fool a fool. All he had to do was make up a reasonable excuse to deceive ordinary people. If you lie to a smart person, you can make it sound reasonable, but the smart person will still have doubts. At this time, you make up a reason that sounds incredible to deceive. The smart person will think like you. But the smart person will also know what I said above, so he will have doubts again. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether the reason is reasonable or not. For the smart person, whether he can be deceived or not, it's up to the smart person who has been deceived, to believe it or not to believe it. This is also a kind of return to nature to a certain extent. Lu Laodao drank the wine and was a little confused for a while. After thinking for a while, he still felt that he didn't get the true meaning. He had to ask, then, does Brother Xen believe it or not? Li Yunxin glanced at him and seemed to think it was very funny. Yunzi is indeed a smart person. I have done so many things in Dongting in the city of Wei before. Some of them I deliberately did to show him, and some of them I didn't want him to know. But now he's seen through everything. Some of the things that I've delayed and done wrong, he's also made up a logical reason for it, and it's self-consistent. What a terrible and smart person he is. The words of this kind of smart person like me, I won't believe a single punctuation mark. Or, this guy scares me. Li Yunxin frowned with dissatisfaction. He scares me. Think about it. You were sitting by the weeping willow and white sand bank and fishing happily. Suddenly you were almost dragged into the water by a big fish, and then this big fish talked to you saying that if you did something for him he would let you go. Gee, think about what he said, then you are looking for death. Li Yunxin was surprised and his eyes were round. He looked at Lu Laodao and pointed to himself. I have always been the one to talk to others like this. He dared to say that to me. He looked at Lu Laodao for a long time. Lu Laodao, who was slow in thinking, said hurriedly, yes, he is too arrogant. I can bear it, but what can't? Li Yunxin put down his hand with satisfaction and turned around. Looking at the dark yard, he curled his lips childishly. There are 2 smart people in the city of Wei. There are many bastards in the shallow waters. I have to kill him. Lu Laodao wanted to ask, Brother Xen, how do you plan to kill him? But he knew it was not a good time to ask about it. If he couldn't think of a way, he would be unhappy for the whole night. He was also afraid that Yunzi had used some tricks and left eyes and ears in the yard. Thus she didn't say anything and just sat quietly with him. After sitting for a while he felt sleepy, although he shouldn't slack off at this tense and pessimistic time, but he did feel sleepy because of the wine. He felt a strange contradiction in his heart. The situation was on the verge of exploding. He was not very worried. Li Yunxin was silent for a while, as if he just remembered that he had forgotten about Lu Laodao. He waved his hand to him. Go back to sleep. Daoist Lu wanted to keep him company, but he knew that Li Yunxin didn't like to be around others when he was thinking, unless he wanted to share his ideas and try to get inspiration from others. So he didn't say anything, nodded slightly and went into the room. Li Yunxin stayed in the yard alone for a while, sighing from time to time. After nearly an hour the rattan chair creaked. He stood up. He paced around the courtyard for a while before he muttered to himself in a very soft voice. The confidence and ease he had when he was in front of old Daoist Lu had completely disappeared. Smart person, smart person, smart person. What would you, a smart person, do? The voice was very low, almost covered by the rustling of the lush trees in the yard. But under the acacia tree, in a pile of fallen flowers on the ground, a half-broken acacia flower trembled slightly. It caught the fleeting sound in the wind and quickly transmitted it to somewhere. This acacia flower continued to tremble slightly. But after all, without the nourishment of the trees, the longer it trembled, the more dispirited it became. A few more flower filaments fell. And Li Yunxin didn't say anything for a long time. After pacing for another half an hour, he finally lowered his voice and said fiercely, as if he was talking to some existence or to himself, Hey, smart person? Humph. You are a smart person, but I am a madman. A little person in the true state. You bet that I don't dare to enter the true state. Hey. You really don't know what a peerless monster is. Tisk tsk. It's a pity that this pretty face can't be preserved. After he said this, the half-broken acacia flower finally lost all its flower filaments and stopped trembling. Li Yunxin snorted in a low voice, flicked his sleeves and walked back to his room. Chapter 172. When the dragon cult came to the city of Wei, they didn't just bring people. They also brought totems. Although the temple under construction was not yet completed, and only the rough framework was seen, the daily worship was necessary, or else the dragon prince would be unhappy. People didn't wonder why the dragon prince was so easily upset, but they thought it was what a god should be like. Therefore, when Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao came to the only quiet small courtyard beside the construction site, many people looked at them with complicated expressions. It was the kind of expression that a group of neighbors who had lived together for more than 10 years and were familiar with each other saw a peddler from another place. This small courtyard used to belong to a widower. On the night when Ling Kongzi fought with the 9th young master, it was on the other side of the street and a little further away, so it wasn't affected. But the house was fine, but the man was. The 60-year-old man couldn't stand the shock and fainted that night. When people found it, the body was already rotten. So no one lived in the house anymore. However, people believed that gods could get rid of filth, and people outside of the city of Wei were not as particular as people in the city. They happily welcomed the golden statue of Dragon Prince, that the carpenter dug out from under the loquat tree in his yard that night, and the clay statues of the 5 guardian gods into the yard and settled them down. Now there were always 4 people guarding outside the courtyard, because the statue was indeed made of gold. And people came to worship from time to time. They were away from home. Although it was just a long trip from Egret Island to the city of Wei for Li Yunxin, it was still away from home. They were always unhappy, always worried, and always needed some spiritual sustenance. When these people saw Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao coming, they all strangely stopped talking at the same time. Lu Laodao had prestige in people's hearts. He was the real hierarch in people's hearts. From the very beginning of the dragon cult's emergence to its current scale, it was naturally inseparable from his glib tongue. In the early days he had done a lot of work dealing with people. After the dragon god cult finally began to be spread and developed by the believers, old Daoist Lu cleverly reduced the number of times he participated in worldly affairs. Thus his image began to be mysterious and tall again. Such an amiable and mysterious leader had a high prestige among the believers. Otherwise, in such an era, how could there be more than 100 people who left their homes to follow him to the city? Moreover, people could really see that Lao Dao's beard and hair were slowly turning from white to jet black. To the common people, compared to painting formations, incantations, magical treasures, and true realms, this was the true miracle of a god. Therefore, when Lu Laodao pointed to a handsome young man a few days ago and told everybody that this was the Jiaozhu of Shenlong Jiao, nobody raised any objection. However, in private they addressed him as Lu, and that person. Now when people saw that person in front of the door, they didn't say anything and just kept a straight face. However, Lu respectfully let him in and stood guard outside the door. At the same time he ordered the believers to step back. The hierarch has something to discuss with the guardians. People obeyed him and stepped back obediently. But more than one person guessed that it was because of the roast chicken bought from a shop in the city that morning. For many people it was the first time in their lives that they had heard of eating chicken in such a way. 15 minutes after Li Yunxin went in, people started to ask about Lu's well-being. It seemed that this was a simple way to show their support for him. Lu Laodao could only smile bitterly in his heart. Li Yunxin walked into the courtyard and went straight to the front hall. As soon as he entered the door he saw a chaotic scene. Mrs. Sanhua's and Qiao Jessen's souls were spirits without bodies, so it took some effort for them to show their forms, but it was easier for them not to show their forms. Rat, black cat, white rabbit, and rooster, the 4 spirits transformed from animals, and it also took effort to transform into humans. But after all, animals transformed into humans to cultivate with human meridians, so maintaining a human form was also a kind of cultivation. But Lu Laodao also advised them not to show their forms in front of believers easily, so as to avoid shocking the world and losing their authority and sense of mystery. The 4 new spirits were told by Li Yunxin to listen to the old man's words, so they didn't object. So when he came in, he saw the 4 spirits running around the house. They were either holding drumsticks, fruits, wine cups, or candlesticks in their hands, chasing each other and fighting for them. The black cat sergeant was the most dexterous, holding a crispy and tender drumstick in her left hand and a wine pot in her right hand. While running like a gust of wind, she chewed and drank. The rat spirit that Li Yunxin gave the name Shuk was the senior brother, but it seemed that he was still afraid of the sergeant, the senior sister, so he didn't dare to chase her. He hid in a corner with a plate of salted peanuts in his hands and ate them. His appearance was really shifty-eyed, which made him look a little wretched. But from the limited contact that Li Yunxin had with him, this rat spirit was actually honest and gentle. That was only true for monsters. The chicken spirit was wearing colorful clothes and had a head of messy red hair, shouting, "Senior sister, give me a bite." It seemed that the whole roasted chicken had entered the sergeant's stomach. The rabbit spirit was a young man in human form, fair and clean, but with buck teeth. He squatted on the armchair by the door and stared at the peanuts in his senior brother's hand, wanting to eat but too embarrassed to ask. Qiao Jessen's soul was attached to a clay statue whose face couldn't be seen clearly, which was still faceless. But the outline of the facial features was vaguely visible, which made Li Yunxin feel a little emotional. Although he had an excellent memory, he had almost forgotten what the girl looked like. Mrs. Sanhua, who was on the gold body, giggled like a lunatic at the running demons and ghosts in the house. It wasn't until she saw Li Yunxin push the door open and come in that she exclaimed, "Ah!" Then she shouted, "Up, up! The hierarch is here. Noisy humph. Noisy. Don't be noisy." Shuk immediately dropped the plate on the ground and stood up. The rabbit spirit was also shocked and jumped off the chair, trying to transform into his original form, but he held back and ran behind the senior brother. The chicken spirit turned around and saw Li Yunxin and his eyes widened. "Ah, my king, senior sister." The cat spirit turned around and stuffed the drumstick and the flagon into the chicken spirit's hand and kicked him down. Blinking her big eyes, she curtsied pitifully. "My king is here." After chewing for a while, he finally swallowed the food in his mouth. "I must be exhausted these days." Mrs. Sanhua giggled. "Hee little demon, you're the laziest." "My king is here." Did my king bring 3 animals?" "Where are they?" Li Yunxin walked straight to the armchair by the door and sat down comfortably. Not replying to the cat spirit, he only said to Sanhua, "I don't have 3 animals. But there's something else good. Do you want it?" Chapter 173. Although Mrs. Sanhua spoke incoherently, she was not muddle-headed when it came to important matters. Hearing Li Yunxin's words, she immediately screamed like a cat whose tail was stepped on. "Ah, something good." What is it?" "A body. My body." Li Yunxin smiled. "That's right. It's a body." Maybe she was too excited, too happy, and too surprised. Hearing this, Sanhua did not say anything. Li Yunxin was silent for a while and continued to talk. The cat spirit's long eyelashes flickered, and she quietly came over to massage his legs. Her 2 small white fists were like white jade hammers, making him feel numb and comfortable. He let out a long sigh. "That time in the wild forest, if it wasn't for you, I would have died. That night you saved me, I promised you that I would give you a result and a place to go. I also told you some rules, do you still remember?" Mrs. Sanhua finally spoke. Her voice was still sharp and thin, but it was rare that she did not speak incoherently. "First, you can't kill people. Second, you can't marry. Hey, you have to have a correct view of the world. You remember it very clearly." Li Yunxin nodded approvingly. "You did well and you were very obedient. You passed the test temporarily. Daoist priest Danqing can give you a body. Daoist priest transcendent can turn illusion into reality. And Daoist priest true state can turn illusion into reality. However, the Taoist priest in the state of the transcendent was a rootless duckweed after all. If the original painting was destroyed, the real body would be gone as well. But Daoist priest true state can use your spirit or a part of your soul to turn illusion into reality. But your spirit and spirit will be consumed and your mind will be damaged. So I have been asking you to possess the painting and the golden body. I don't want to use these two methods for you, because I want to give you something better. I've been thinking about it for the past few days and I've finally figured it out. Li Yunxin said, although I think this is a safe and feasible method, there are still risks. And once this method works, you'll have to help me do a few things when you get the real body. Kill a few people. I need to ask you about this. Will you do it or not? The four monsters in the room all turned to look at the golden sculpture on the incense burner table. Qiao Jesun's soul turned around and stared at it, seeming a little envious. After a while, Sanhua said, "Murder. Aya, the king doesn't allow me to take anyone's life, Aya." "Oh. Those aren't humans, they're cultivators and Daoist priests." Li Yunxin spread his hands. "It doesn't count as violating the commandments." Sanhua immediately cried out in joy. "Ah? Hee, that's good, hee, kill quickly, give it to me." Li Yunxin reached out his hand to touch the fan and took out a scroll of paper. Then he stood up, shook his hand, and the scroll opened with a swoosh. It was a familiar figure in the painting. Then he slightly frowned, put his fingers together and shouted, "Go!" The painting immediately emitted a burst of green light, and a figure slowly took shape in the green light. Li Yunxin shouted again, "Get on her body." A cold wind immediately blew in the hall. The triflower incorporeal spirit body suddenly pounced on the shadow. After another breath, the figure solidified. Li Yunxin stared at her for a while, then asked, "Are you still there?" "I'm here." It was indeed Sanhua's voice. But she only stood there, not daring to move, as if she was afraid that without Li Yunxin's order, she would damage her new body. Li Yunxin let out a sigh. Then while staring at her, he slowly tore the scroll in his hand. The figure was still there. He pointed at the pile of paper on the ground and the paper immediately turned into ashes. The figure was still there. Li Yunxin stared at Mrs. Sanhua for a while with a complicated expression, and finally let out a long sigh, just as I expected. For the Daoist priests in painting, the state of the transcendent meant turning nothingness into reality. When in the state of emptiness, one could create virtual shadows to scare people. Just like when he used the shadow of the ninth young master to scare Constable Xing in the forest, and earned a chance to escape. But the shadow could be seen but not touched, it was just a shadow. When in the state of the transcendent, drawing on the paper, one could summon a real form. He drew a green armored swordsman outside the half-collapsed temple of Mrs. Sanhua in the wild forest, and killed the thief. That was the method of the state of the transcendent. And at that time, although Mrs. Sanhua's spiritual power had barely reached the state of the transcendent, the swordsman that was summoned quickly disappeared when it saw human blood, an object of extreme yang. But when one reached the peak of the state of the transcendent and drew a picture, one could indeed summon a tangible object that was not afraid of any object of extreme yang. But in fact there were restrictions and rules. Otherwise, if a Daoist priest in the state of the transcendent painted every day, he would be able to draw an army on his own. The ability and power of the object summoned by the state of the transcendent depended on 2 points. If it really existed, there was no way to summon it. For example, if a Daoist priest in the state of the transcendent drew a picture of the ninth young master, and the ninth young master really existed, then it could not be summoned. Li Yunxin guessed that this was probably related to the emptiness of this world that Black Bai Yanjun mentioned. And if it was made by one's own imagination and it was also believed by the public, then the power would be slightly greater. For example, the people of a certain place all believed that there was a mountain god on the mountain, and the appearance would be described in detail. And this power of vow was not enough to produce a yin god. Once a painter in the state of the transcendent drew it, it would probably be a mountain god. Something was created out of thin air. For example, a drawing of Xianxia, then it would only be a Xianxia. An ordinary Xianxia would not have any hidden attributes, such as strong martial arts skills, demon-like wisdom, etc. However, there was still a limitation in the end. This type of abstruse method in essence had a subtle relationship with the emptiness and power of vow. The painter in the state of the transcendent drew a picture and summoned a person, but in reality he had used some kind of method that was similar to the power of faith, supplemented with Taoist arts. In a certain sense he had forcefully created a yin god. This process was very strenuous. It would consume the cultivation base of the Daoist priest Danqing. Once the foundation of this Yin god, the painting was destroyed, this Yin god would also be gone. Once this Yin god was brutally killed by an external force, then the Daoist priest Danqing, who had a subtle connection with this Yin god, would also be injured. Therefore, using the Yin god summoned by the state of the transcendent to fight was actually using the Daoist priest Danqing's life to fight. If it was not a critical moment, no one would be willing to use their own life and cultivation base to play around. However, Li Yunxin had just destroyed the picture scroll. But the figure was still there. This was a successful attempt that he made after connecting it with his experience of seizing Qi Wen's godly position. It really worked. As for the reason, he could only think of one thing. In the other world, this figure still had a wide range of believers. Therefore it could be preserved. This was the way of the long term. As he thought of these, he saw that Xiao Jessen, who was attached to the clay sculpture, was staring at him. He did not know if she could understand, but Li Yunxin still shook his head slightly. Not now. With this painting alone, I have already fallen back to the middle stage of the transcendent. Little girl, wait a little longer. Sai, actually, it is not bad that you have received so much incense in the power of vow, and cultivated your own spirit into the real body. Then he looked at the still motionless Sanhua. Let me ask you now. Li Yunxin stayed in the courtyard for a full hour. When he came out, it was already noon. Lu Laodao looked at his face, but he did not see anything. He was just wearing a stern face when he went in, but now he looked calmer. Li Yunxin walked to him and said, "Let's go." Lu Laodao turned around and gave some instructions to the people guarding the door, and then hurried to catch up with Li Yunxin. As soon as the two of them left, the people at the door hurried to the hall to have a look. Chicken bones and cups were scattered all over the floor. So they came for this? A strong and stocky woman said angrily. Then her tone suddenly became gentle. I just feel sorry for my Lu. While the people were complaining about the stolen chicken, Li Yunxin and Lu Laodao saw a little person walking on the street. They were planning to go to Munenju for lunch. Turning into a narrow road, Lu Laodao was about to ask Li Yunxin about the matter, when he heard a knock 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 sound. It sounded like a bamboo board was knocking on the bluestone road. So he turned around and saw it. It was the kind of little person made of green bamboo sold by street vendors. The bamboo was crude and the bamboo was not even dry. If it was raining, it would crack and mold after a few days at home. But now, this palm-sized green bamboo person was very lively. Using the bamboo poles as its legs, it hopped to the front of Li Yunxin and bowed. Then it asked, "My master sent me to ask Lord Tongun, what do you think about last night's matter?" Li Yunxin tilted his head and looked at the little person. He laughed sinisterly. Your master is interesting. Why is he so impatient to kill a fellow practitioner? The green bamboo person bowed again. My master sent me to ask Lord Tongun, what do you think about last night's matter? Li Yunxin was slightly stunned and snorted. But, so it turned out to be this kind of shoddy goods. Do you want to die? Even if your master didn't say it, I would still kill. After saying this, without waiting for the little person to bow again, he stepped on it. Then he looked around and saw a sparrow on the wall of the alley. It tilted its head and stared at him with two black bean-like eyes. Li Yunxin looked at it for a while, snorted again and pointed at it. If you want to kill me, I'll let you do it. But if I kill someone, you have to do something for me. The sparrow chirped twice, flapped its wings and flew away. So in the afternoon, news came from the Shangqing Danding Sex Station in City of Wei. The cultivators took action. But this action was more like a child's play to them. It was something they would never lower themselves to do in the past. They would show some shocking tricks in the city and among the believers, but not so brilliant that they couldn't understand it. Then they would persuade the people that the dragon cult was an evil cult and that focusing on Taoism was the right way. More than one cultivator thought that this method was very lame. But the reason why they reluctantly tried to do it was because they finally learned a shocking secret. Lord Tongtian, the second son of the dragon Hatred, disappeared in Tongtianzhe of the Yi Kingdom a month ago and his cultivation was almost destroyed. He was the leader of the dragon cult. He was thinking of a way to recultivate his Dharmakaya according to the good wishes of the believers. Usually, these cultivators of the realm of wills and realm of emptiness would never want to be involved in this kind of thing. But this time, they were secretly summoned by their former master and old friends. They were told that the dragon sun hatred was extremely weak and only had the cultivation of the transcendent state. He planned to recultivate the path of good wishes and find his Daoist heart. It was the best time to kill him. The hatred gathered a group of monsters to create the dragon cult. The first thing the cultivators had to do was to cut off the source of its power of wishes. When this side was cleaned up, the president of the Langya Cave School of Law, the enlightened Jinren cultivator Yunzi, would come and kill him. By that time, everyone would have a share of such a magical power. Who wouldn't be tempted? For these low-level cultivators, it was Yunzi who told them not to tell their fellow Daoists. Even if someone came to ask them, they wouldn't tell them. They were afraid that the credit would be shared by more people. But the cultivators of Daotong were the same as the swordsmen of Kenzo. They were better at fighting. He said that he had to display his supernatural powers to these ordinary people, so he couldn't be too shocking and startle the dragon Yizi. It was indeed a difficult task. Plus, the dragon cult members must have done something wrong. Or in other words, the ignorant people were so stupid. They only said that Priest Lu of South Mountain worshipped the dragon prince and his hair turned from white to black in just a month. And the dragon cult didn't take any money from them. Instead, they often gave them aid. How could there be such a cult in the world? Because of this, from the time the cultivators received the news in the afternoon until the evening, almost everyone's efforts were in vain. The cultivators were patient. But this patience was for cultivation, not for mortals. If it wasn't for Yunzi's strict order not to take anyone's life, some cultivators who hadn't passed the killing tribulation and had an unstable Taoist heart would have already started killing. So some people decided to think of other ways. To break up the dragon cult. Perhaps cultivators weren't very good at bewitching people, but fighting and killing people were always better than that. These days they all knew that the dragon cult had a commanding elder and a young man called the cult master. What a joke. The real cult master was hatred. Why would the dragon son appear in the market? It was obvious that he was a puppet. If he killed the puppet and the sect elder, wouldn't the cult disperse in an uproar? At that time Reverend Yunzi would make his move. Great things would be done. The first people who thought of this plan were a Void Realm cultivator and a Conception Realm cultivator. Chapter 174. These two people were originally fellow cultivators of Zhou Xian Lingbao School, and they came to the secular world together to experience the tribulation. The head of Zhou Xian Lingbao School, Tong Zhouzi, was one of the 5 cultivators who went to the Li State to pursue the Ghost Emperor a month ago. Unfortunately, although this person's cultivation level was high, he had a very rare shortcoming among high-level cultivators. He was stingy. Zhou Xian Lingbao School was also one of the 36 schools of Daotong. Although it wasn't as rich as the Heavenly Cave, it wasn't a poor family either. Even the most inferior school had enough treasures to buy half of the Daqing state. But this head of Tong Zhouzi never gave the famous or precious books of his school to the cultivators to experience the tribulation. When his disciples reached the peak of the intent realm, he would drive them down the mountain, saying that they could only experience the tribulation themselves, so that their cultivation level could be solid. This was not wrong, but the problem was, he didn't even want to use his protective magic treasures and high-level talismans. He would only drive his disciples out of the school and tell them, "The world is full of spirit treasures, look for them carefully." It really fit the name, Zhou Xian Lingbao School. The Intent Realm cultivator's Daoist name was Zi Guzi, and the Emptiness Realm cultivator's Daoist name was Zhi Yoshi. He had met Yu Yunzi once in the past and he had given him some pointers on cultivation, so he owed him a favor. This time when he got the news, he was the first to rush over. Not because he was sentimental, but because a true realm cultivator like Yunzi couldn't be as stingy as their head. Even if he sent them to do something and then threw them a talisman, it would be a talisman written by a true realm cultivator. They had never seen such a good thing. It was very sad to talk about it. Therefore, these two people were the ones who put in the most effort in doing this. While the other low-level cultivators were still pondering how to be reserved and amiable to those secular people, these two had already gathered a group of people at a corner of a construction site in the ruins of Taoshi Road. Originally, he didn't intend to say too much and only used this method to intimidate the other party. Therefore, Ting Qingshan used Ji Yoshi's elementary emptiness realm incantation, Devil Subduing Sutra. It was noon, the sun was scorching and there was only a slight breeze. A group of people who had been working for half a day surrounded the two of them. The smell was really unpleasant. They frowned and looked at them with vigilant and doubtful eyes. This made the two cultivators feel that they should end this task as soon as possible and calm these people down. Thus Xianxia wrote in the air. Although the writing was strenuous and slow, he had indeed forced out spiritual power from his fingertips. With only one finger, without using a magic brush, he had managed to write a true talisman of the character, subdue. With Xianxia as the center, the area within a few dozen feet of him immediately became quiet. There were cicadas chirping at first, but the chirping was suppressed. The background noise of people working in the distance had also disappeared. The breeze was suppressed as well. At this moment, these two cultivators, along with the 30 to 40 people around them, temporarily severed their fate with this world. However, after Xianxia wrote the devil-subduing sutra and adjusted his breathing, the people surrounding the two of them finally became impatient. Just now, the self-proclaimed Daoist priest had a solemn expression on his face, as if he had exerted a lot of effort and was about to show off his ability. Because of this, the people even lowered their voices while talking to each other. But now, nothing happened. There was no light, no sound, no fireworks, and no little people. The two Daoist priests just stood there in a daze. They didn't say anything and only looked at these people with a rather arrogant expression. Why are they so arrogant? They came to listen to their nonsense in the middle of the day. There was originally some wind, but now there wasn't even a trace of wind. It was so stuffy that it made people panic. Originally, the smell on their bodies was unpleasant, but now it was even worse. Someone asked, "Where's the magic trick?" The two Daoist priests seemed to be offended. They looked at them in disbelief and said, "You fools, you actually didn't." Who could bear to listen to them? They actually called them fools. After holding it in for a long time, they didn't even make a fart. They were also wearing ordinary clothes, but they still pretended to be experts. It was obvious that they were trying to scam some money to scare people. The people started to make sarcastic remarks about the two of them. The noise in the distance was suppressed, but the voices of 30 to 40 people were already considered lively. Who would care about such inconspicuous details? When they were satisfied with their sarcastic remarks, they ridiculed the two of them and then dispersed. Before Xianxia could say, "You actually didn't understand the mysteries of Taoism?" This group of unruly people, fools, they actually said that the deity in the temple could even make the incense and candles spontaneously ignite. They said that was what the real deities would do. However, in his sect even a child could do that. The more the two of them thought about it, the angrier they got. They almost wanted to kill, but then they remembered Yunzi's warning. Thus, they decided not to talk to these fools again until tomorrow. Originally, when they were cultivating in the blessed heavenly abode, they were surrounded by people of the same noble and pure path. Even those who were greedy and stingy would cover their faces with a veil called etiquette and politeness. Although under this veil, the greed and stinginess of the experts were no different from the greed and stinginess of the ordinary people. Even the prostitutes liked to be glib and knew how to make people happy. How could there be so many people who could really appreciate the so-called true temperament and simplicity? The two cultivators felt that it was terrible to deal with the ordinary people. They were originally high up and looked down on these ordinary people, and they shouldn't have any contact with them. Now they had to mix in. It was like digging into a swamp. Thus they left. They also didn't want to go to the Pill Cauldron sect's residence of the Xianxia sect. It wouldn't be good if Yunzi found out that they didn't do anything during the day. But they also didn't want to go to the wind and moon. Their hearts were indeed filled with impatience. Thus, after walking around the city and calming down a little, they finally felt that something wasn't right. Why did they waste so much effort? Why didn't they just kill the sect leader and the commanding elder? Although they didn't have a way to clearly determine the cultivation level of other people, they knew some details. These cultivators came from the Xianmen sect and were very proud and arrogant. At first, when Yunzi told them to mix in with the crowd, some people, after seeing Lu Laodao, used what they thought was a clever Xianmen sect technique to test him, just to see his cultivation level. The result was very close to the truth. Although Lu Gongzhan's cultivation level was in the emptiness realm, what he cultivated was the Tao of painting. In terms of fighting, he couldn't compare with the cultivators of Dao Tong and Kenzo. Moreover, he cultivated on his own before, and Li Yunxin probably didn't know many small tricks, let alone him. Thus, the result the cultivators got was that this was a Daoist at the peak of the conception realm, only in terms of fighting strength. Some cautious cultivators went to ask Yunzi if it was true, but the true realm cultivator who gathered them just smiled and didn't say anything. In the end, Daoist Yunzi wouldn't harm his juniors and fellow cultivators. Thus, the cultivators became more and more certain. Thus, when the sun was setting in the west, these two came up with this idea. At that time, they were walking in an alley paved with blue stone, thinking that this idea was indeed feasible. They planned to do it tomorrow. Why not tonight but tomorrow? Because tomorrow the people on Taoshi Road would go to work. They planned to kill the commanding elder and the sect leader of the dragon cult in front of everyone when those ignorant people went to work tomorrow, so that those ignorant people could see what was the real Daoist technique of immortals. After making up their minds, the two prepared to return to the station. But at night, a dark alley was always a place where accidents happened frequently. After walking a dozen steps, they found that the other end of the alley was blocked. A black horse blocked the exit. A swordsman stood in front of the black horse. He wore black clothes, and his shoulders, elbows, and other easily worn parts were lined with leather, which not only wouldn't be damaged, but also had a protective effect. He wore a bamboo hat. It was unknown how, but the bamboo hat was also black. It was pulled down low, revealing only his firm lips and his broad chin, which looked strong and powerful. He stood in the middle of the road with a black saber in his arms. The moonlight cast a clear glow on the blade. Ziguzi and Jiyoshi looked at each other, stopped, and looked at the person in front of them in surprise. Cultivators might not be able to see the level of other cultivators, but it wasn't difficult to see the level of mortals. Right now, this man with a black saber was going to stop them. Does he want to die? Perhaps it was because they had a belly full of resentment from the secular people during the day that they had nowhere to vent. The two cultivators tacitly stopped talking and stood still. They didn't wave their hands to send him flying, but in some kind of complicated and subtle state of mind, they wanted to listen to what he had to say. The swordsman in black saw the two's movements through the gap of the bamboo hat. Then he squinted his eyes, but he still couldn't see clearly through the gap, so he used the hilt of the saber in his arms to push the bamboo hat upward, and finally saw the surprised expression on the two's faces. This was a result that he was satisfied with. He smiled slightly, revealing a row of snow-white teeth. Under the moonlight, the dark night, and the black clothes, this made him look dangerous and cruel. I am Black Saber Ingjuren. There are some things I want to ask you two friends. When the other party heard his name, the expression on his face was still surprised. But he had already calmed down and only stared at him. This was a very normal reaction. Jianghu people would probably have two reactions when they heard the name Black Saber Ingjuren. Those with a high enough status might admire him or despise him or gnash their teeth, but they would always know him. As for the small characters, those who had just entered Jianghu and were ignorant, they would probably be like this. They still didn't know who was standing in front of them. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. During the day I saw the two of you doing things. Hee, your methods weren't very clever. Didn't you use your methods well? The two of you look clean, and the way you speak also seems to be educated. But which temple attendant has lost his job, and you want to earn a bowl of unconventional food? I guess you want to get a share of the profits from the dragon cult. Since those people believe in the so-called dragon prince, they are also idiots. They have become a good target for you. But the two of you, let me give you a piece of advice. You can't afford to eat the dragon cult's food. I'm afraid that if you eat it, you will lose your life. After saying this, the two opposite him seemed to want to laugh. They didn't take his advice to heart at all. But Black Saber Ingjuren wasn't angry. He shook his head. Say, alas, do you know who is behind the dragon cult? You know that it is the Yu family in the city of Wei who is doing things behind the scenes. He is a businessman and deals with the government. He is not a Jianghu person, so he really can't interfere with our Jianghu affairs. But what about the Eagle King Castle? You can't not know, right? 20 years ago, the Eagle King's son Dingheng destroyed the whole Qian family. Since then, the Eagle King Castle has dominated Jianghu. Let me tell you today the Yu family is still related to the Eagle King Castle. After saying this, Ingjuren stared at the two people. Now that you know all this, I will ask you one more question. Do you want to get rich? Jiyoshi let out a sigh gently. Oh, rich? What kind of rich? Ingjuren snorted. Those followers and believers of the dragon cult are actually people with a hard life. They are bewitched by the cult for a while and they have given away a lot of their wealth. I have never seen such things in other prefectures. The cult collects money and then runs away after that. Only the common people suffer. They're all poor people. Why do you want to take advantage of them? In my opinion, we Jianghu people should be open and above board in doing things. You have been mingling with those followers these days, so you should know that the dragon cult has a golden statue. It weighs 16 kilograms and weighs 2 or 3 coins. If you rob the golden statue, First, you can rob the rich and help the poor. Second, the dragon cult can't even guard the golden statue. How can its followers believe it? In a few days, those deceived people will scatter like birds and beasts. But Jiyoshi suddenly interrupted him. Why do you keep an eye on us? How long have you been watching us? Ingjuren slightly raised his head and said proudly, no one can know who I, Ingjuren, want to watch. As for why I watch you, just think of it as a gift from God to you since you are tired. So you're saying that the two of us are nothing special in your eyes and it's just a coincidence? Ziguzi added. Yes. Since you said that we are not worthy of the dragon cult's rice bowl and talked about the Eagle King fort, why do you want to do this and provoke them? Ingjuren slightly frowned. As a Jianghu person, he realized that these two people were not right. The tone of these two people was calm and unhurried. After hearing about the golden statue that weighed 16 kilograms, they did not look greedy at all. So the two of you are the claws and teeth of the Eagle King Castle. Ingjuren suddenly took off his bamboo hat, tightly gripped his black blade and shouted out. With such a shout, the black saber tore through the air with a hum and slashed at the place where the two people were standing. However, the two cultivators only took a slight step back, and the saber was dodged. Black Saber Ingjuren only needed a blink of an eye to understand the situation. The two people were not afraid at all after hearing his name. They deliberately put on a show during the day to lure him into a trap. Now they easily dodged his saber. These two people's martial arts were shockingly high and their thoughts were shockingly deep. He shouted again, let's go together. Let's fight them to death. As soon as he finished speaking, an old man walked out from behind the black horse. He was also dressed in black and held a black saber. However, after hesitating for a while, he said, Heroing, I remember you told me that this path of 7 killings is the path of advancing courageously alone. Ingjuren frowned and said in a low voice, these claws of the Eagle King Fort, don't talk about Jianghu morality with them. Let's go together. Advancing courageously. The path of advancing courageously alone. This body, your body and mine all belong to the Jianghu's righteous path. We are also advancing courageously alone. There is no other Jianghu righteous path. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.